Good evening and welcome to the Village of Westmont Committee of the Whole meeting for July 29, 2010. I'd like to have our clerk take the roll call, please.
Mayor Ron.
Here.
The clerk's here. Trustee Emery. Here. Fleming.
Here.
Trustee Forsley.
Here.
Trustee Klebanow. Here. Trustee Scott.
Here.
Trustee Seneca.
Here.
Manager Searle.
Here.
Attorney Zemanek.
Here.
Economic Development Director and Assistant Manager Kimball. Here. Public Works Director May. Here. Police Chief Mulhern. Here. Fire Chief Trout. Here. Budget Analyst Parker. Here.
Okay, thank you. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item are the minutes of Committee of the Whole meeting held July 15th and board meeting held July 19th, 2010. Any corrections to be reported, clerk, at this time? Hearing none, moving right along, open forum. We have two open forum requests before us this evening. And the first is the Westmont Chamber of Commerce at 1 South Cass. Larry Forsberg.
Good evening, Mayor Ron and Village Board members. Just a quick announcement tonight. I want to let everybody know, especially our residents and guests, that we have our next progressive dinner coming up, and it's going to be on Wednesday, August the 18th. We're going to be featuring the Brickyard Grill, Uncle Bub's, Tasty Treat, Everything Southwestern, Rude Awakening, and we're going to have several businesses that will be participating. It's going to be a family-focused event. We're going to be playing goldfish. So as you stop at each establishment, families will be able to get a card and we'll have some prizes. So adult cost will be $25 for the evening. Children from 5 to 10 years will be $12.50, and those under 5 years old will be $3. So for additional information, contact the Chamber, westmontchamber.com, 630-960-5553. We look forward to seeing everybody on Wednesday, August 18th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Second request this evening is from a Dr. Joanne T. Meal, M-E-L-E, who is a resident of the Oak Brook Hills, residences of Oak Brook Hills, next to Oak Brook Hills Hotel. Now, what I have from Mrs., is it Meal? Is that how you pronounce that?
Mealy, M-E-L-E.
Mealy, are three separate open forum requests. And our policy is to allow three minutes, and we don't normally get 3 requests from one person. So if you
Well, it was all due respect. I put that, yeah. They said both the forum and agenda were on the same paper, and I put agenda at the top. So you did. That's agenda, not forum, because I have much more than 3 minutes on each subject, sir.
Okay, well, we'd like to have you keep your comments as close to 3 minutes on each one of them as you can.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Where would you like me to begin?
You can start.
Let's start with number 1.
Yeah, start anywhere you'd like.
Which is the drainage issue.
Okay.
Behind, I'm in Townhouse number 9 Willow Crest Drive, and number 8 is the one that has the quagmire type of situation, where the soil is like feces, like it's brown. I had it in my hand, and I had to get a manicure. I tried to cut the cuticles, but the cuticles absorbed the dark brown material. The next day, naturally, I put gloves on. I mean, a dentist should not be. You don't want to think your dentist is in feces, you know. And so, but actually, I got excited, you know, because actually I found something. And anyway, what happens is it's, even though it's behind my neighbor, number 8, it's draining into my land, into my sump, whereas I have replaced 4 sump pumps in 2 years. Usually the replacement is, well, not usually, always, it's on after hours, so it's quite costly. I used Stevens Plumbing the 3 times, and then I used Bud Crees the last time, because that was Easter night. I was coming from Hoffman Estates from a family affair, a party, and when I came home, I don't know what told me to go downstairs, because what I do is, since I've lived there, which is going to be 3 years, Labor Day this year, September 1st, I would babysit the pump. For 3 years, I babysat the pump, as well as the foundation crack in the, but that's not what I'm here for. But I babysat. Good thing I have an elevator. I could never do the stairs, and that's why I came to that place. In fact, I have my realtor here who showed me that place because she knew how disabled I was, and I lost my mother, and I needed to get out of there. My mother lived with me. So, make a long story short, we can wrap this up now because Mr. Bud Crees emailed me that the board has now hired him to dig up that area tomorrow morning. So we'll see. I'll come back if it's not rectified. In the meantime, though, Trustee Warren's, Humberto, the man they sent out as the rep, who, not sales rep, to actually put Trustee Warren's pump in. You know, Trustee Warren's is a company out of not Willowbrook, it's north. I can't think of it, it's Willow something. Woodfield, no, Wooddale. My neighbor has one, and Bud was always telling me all along, I says, why can they go away for 12 months at a time? And nothing happens. Well, he says, you're getting their groundwater. Well, my house is the lowest between the two, between 8 and 10, but I don't know if I'm getting their groundwater, it's coming off of the golf course. And so he's going to come. Trustee Warren said he would not he would put the pump in, but no warranty. So yesterday I talked to the vice president, and today I talked to Scott, and they're coming on the 11th to put it in, and I am going to get
So that may
more than the state of the art. It's going to be $3,500, but I will be safe. So I am doing the pump. I'm not afraid. I've always done my own house. I have contracts on the elevator, contracts on the garage. I'm a personality that, because I live alone and I don't have anybody to depend on, I have no family, but I was always this way, even when my mom was there and my brother. I need to be secure so that I know. Is it 3 minutes up, sir?
Yes.
I'm done.
Thank you.
Number two? Number two is number two. Do I have to stick with that, or can I go to number 3?
Whichever one.
Our number 3 then is the driveway repairs, of which there are 9 of us, myself included, that need the repairs. And what happened is Builders Concrete, this is since inception, since move-in, so this is 3 years, and it's the same for everybody. I have pictures of all of them. If you'd like to see them, I have my camera. I went around the property and took pictures of everything. I have pictures of everything I'm speaking about today, in fact. I have pictures of that quagmire. I have pictures of the bricks, the pebbles, the brown-like material, if anybody wants to see them. I didn't have a chance to, because I work too part-time, but now I'm on vacation starting today, so for 2 weeks. The last one I had was 15 years ago, but that's okay. It's just because I don't need it. I did a lot of traveling in my lifetime. So, and now I have a new dog, so. About that is that Bud has gotten really fierce now. He's gotten really fierce. At first, it was $75 per each of us for him to do 3 emails of which he was saying, how was your holiday? So after I told him, that I was going to probably go further with this, it sparked him on now. He sent a very tough email to him, section upon section upon section upon section. So I'm good with that. I'm good with that because I can always go to small claims court. Is that 3 minutes?
Yes.
It's okay. I can't jog because of my feet, so this is good for my aerobic exercise. The next one, I know that I was told I would get thrown out of here, and you would not take me serious. I was told that by a board member, that don't bring this up, but I have to bring it up because I'm petrified. This is about the coyotes on the property. Their den is right at the entrance, and if I cry, don't feel bad, because it's just because I relieve the pressure in my stomach, because it's very stressful for me. I'll say this as fast as I can. This is hard to do in 3 minutes. The den is when you drive in to the right. Okay, it's actually across from the model home, so that's number 4 and number 5 that are going to be sold. God help the people that buy. That's all I can say. If I was living across from the den, I would be in a state psychiatric hospital. Why? Because I've had dealings with them. My cat, my 9-year-old domestic short hair, front declawed, Maggie, got out for the first time from my garage. And she went out with the 11-year-old, but he had cancer, so I didn't know it. But he says, oh, he's staying home. So he when I opened the door, he came in, but she was gone. She likes to catch insects and stuff. And so she was gone for 25 hours. At which time, Wanda, who was with me, and my friends, they all came to help me. Anybody that she knew their voice, I thought was important. She didn't have no chip in her. She didn't have a tag. She didn't have anything, and I felt stupid when they asked me that. So now she has everything. She wears her tags to bed, and the other one did too. Then after, you know how the horse is out of the barn. That's how you do that kind of thing. But so anyway, we hear at 9 p.m. on the second day. So she goes out Friday to Saturday night at 9 p.m. There's 3 of us, myself, Wanda, and Maggie Murph. And so we're out, it's pouring, and I got ponchos for them, 1 Cubs, 1 socks, and all kinds of things. We got umbrellas. Now I have searchlights, not just a flashlight. I did alone before. I did it alone the night before. My neighbor says, and he's a male, I'm not coming out. I'm not coming out. He says, I'll leave the lights on for you. I said, that's okay. That's all right, Anthony. He says, because you heard what happened. You heard that Dana and I, we were sleeping, and they were in on our patio and were screaming and everything. And they woke us up, and so they were afraid of him. I said, that's okay. I have a flashlight. So I looked, and I didn't see anything. So then the next night at 9 o'clock, this is the important thing. At exactly 9:30, we walk out of my front door, which I am very close to the gate. And I'm the 3rd one from the gate, actually. And if anybody has ever heard, and Fred Kimball told me he did, and he'll never forget it either, that the guttural scream of a coyote doing a live kill, and I thought it was Maggie. Now, I can't run, so I stayed in the car, and I drove real fast, but Maggie ran. Maggie Murph, I'll call her Murph because they're both Maggie. I named the cat after her. So she says, don't look. She says, it's a bird. Okay, and then I see this teenager coyote going. So I just flash the light, and then they run with the light. Okay. Okay, now the next thing is, there's 3 things, and please give me the minutes. This is important. And I got the pictures. The second item is this. I don't have children. I'm not married. I don't have grandchildren. I am doing this for my neighbors as well now as my pets, because 2 nights ago, I'm taking Petey out. He's my 8-month-old Tibetan Terrier that I just got. And there's a car coming, so I flashed the light, and so now he's got an oversized but a comfortable collar on. I mean, I'm a new owner. I raised with a dog, but I waited for a dog 63 years. And so he came to me because God was taking Paulie. That's what it's all about. So he says, so he's not trained, so he doesn't heel. So I go to pull him, but my hands grab the thing, and he runs. He runs. He's just a pup. And so he runs and runs, and I don't know which way to go, the right or the left. And so all of a sudden, now I'm in front of Townhouse 17, and I'm in 9. And this guttural scream, now I am screaming, running with the flashlight, screaming, Petey, Petey, Petey. And 3 of my neighbors, all out of one house, the husband, the wife, and they're the ones with the grandchildren, and whoever was visiting are laughing. They're laughing at this. Okay. So I had some choice words for them. I said, I hope you're not going to laugh when it's your grandchild. Okay, I keep running. Now Petey comes out. Okay, he took care of them. What it is there is a baby coyote. One of my neighbors, good thing she was in a car driving and not with her cockapoo, because that's where she walked. We all walk. And she was going to get out of the car. She thought it was a chihuahua, and it was the baby coyote. So what they're trying to do now is train the baby to kill. Well, which all? Lions, tigers do that.
Can you speed up? We've got a long agenda.
I just got one more sentence.
Please,
okay,
if you will.
is that in Townhouse 14, I don't have to mention names, it doesn't matter, you know, it's Ferrara. His girl, Andrea, has two, what are they, bulls, not pit bulls, they're bulls. What's the bull? Somebody help me. You help me, sir.
Bull
You know, the
mastiffs,
short,
there's all kinds of
bulldogs, two bulldogs. And she said, I was in the house. She said, and there's just no way, the sound of how that baby cried because it was afraid of my bulldogs. Well, my neighbor saw the big Lion King standing on my mountain like 3 years ago when I saw. I don't really think it's funny, but whatever. I don't know if you're laughing or squinting or what, but this is really not funny. This is life and death. And so Maggie, you know, because she stays on the screen porch. I have a screen porch, and in 3 months I'll have it all windowed in. It'll be a 4-season room. So I'm spending my money to help all these issues that I have, sir. So he knows, he smells new blood. Because Renata told me that for 1 year when she came there with her cockaboo, that she was bothered by the coyotes too. See, but in the winter they all go to Florida, I'm there alone in the winter, and that's when they're hungry. Right now they're feeding on the rescue, because I have a picture of a little bird that's not a goose, and it's a little bird, it's a baby bird that they ate just half of it. I have a picture of it.
We're going to have to end this.
I'm done.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Done. You're welcome. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't know this was I thought it was agenda.
Thank you.
So would somebody explain what happened, why it's not agenda, or when will it be agenda? If I just did this, can I come back for agenda?
Perhaps,
No, go ahead.
No, I
Dan.
just don't know what the protocol is. My first time ever in
Our
a
staff
village.
has been in touch with you. Fred Kimball has talked to you. We are aware of all of these situations.
Wow.
We don't have any answers to give you to solve these problems, like waving the magic wand, but we're aware of it, and if there's something that we can do, that staff can do, or if any of the board members have suggestions, we're more than happy to do that. But
Well, let me just
thank
say
you.
one thing then, if you're dismissing me. You could have called a moratorium, okay? You could have called a moratorium because you had someone come and Marcia Elliott had someone come and survey the property, and he saw it. His name is Mike. Now there's an engineer called Space Co.
Thank you.
It would have helped us immensely.
Moving right along, reports. Mayor, I have nothing to report at this moment. Next, our village clerk.
The only thing, I want to invite everybody that can come tomorrow and say goodbye to Steve. It's his last day, and we'll be having refreshments from 8 to 11 in the morning, and then from 1 to 2:30, right? Or 12? 12 to 2:30. 12 to 2:30, so there's plenty of time. I'm going to miss him. I think we all will. He's been a wonderful, wonderful deputy clerk, so I'm kind of emotional about it, but we'll do okay. So please come. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Our village attorney, John Zemanek.
nothing to report tonight. Thank you.
Village manager, Ron Searle.
Thank you. I just would like an executive session for personnel.
Okay. Trustee items. Trustee Scott.
Nothing this evening, sir.
Trustee Klebanow.
Just want to announce that Monday at 6:30 here, right here in our room, we're having the Public Information Committee meeting. So hopefully, if there's not a finance meeting, maybe some people can come to the Public Information meeting. But you all have the agenda, and the public is invited, and I'm sure they're going to be discussing things about the upcoming events for the fall. So hopefully you can be there. Thank you. 6:30 here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I have one thing I have to say, I forgot. We lost a businessman in downtown, I guess a couple days ago, over the weekend. Carl Martin passed away at Suburban Insurance. A longtime businessman here in town, and nice old guy, and he'll be missed. I think the wake is tomorrow at Tunes.
Okay. Thank you. Trustee Seneca.
Thank you. There will not be an economic development meeting on Wednesday of next week. There's really not many agenda items, so we're just going to cancel it this month. I also wanted to say, extend sympathy to the Martin family, the Vath family, and the Shar family. We've suffered some major losses in our community over the last couple of weeks, so heartfelt sympathies to all of those families. And then the last thing I have is a really upbeat good thing. It's happy birthday, Ginny, because it's our clerk's birthday today. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Forsley.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Trustee Fleming.
The only thing I have this evening is to remind everyone, second Tuesday of every month is a Public Works meeting, the 10th. This will be the only time I can really announce it, so it will be at the Water Department, and we're going to make it at 7 o'clock in the evening.
And what's the date?
That is the 10th of August.
Okay. Very good, thank you. Trustee Emery.
I just have one thing this evening, and I need to step outside of Westmont, and it's a cause that can potentially affect certain residents of Westmont. And that's an appeal to people to contact our state rep, Patty Bellock, and our state senator, Kirk Dillard, and ask them for help. Up in Glen Ellen, the Philip Rock Center is closing because of lack of state funds. It's the only facility in the state. It's a residential facility that works teaching children who are both deaf and blind. And the kids there are from 3 to 21 years of age. It at least gives them a shot and a chance. And for the governor to come up with no funding for it is very distressing. There's nowhere else they can go and learn. And the center does outreach, including into Westmont and downstate, for another 400 children who are both deaf and blind. So when I see that there's funding for sports programs at schools to buy basketballs, but no funding for kids who can't see and can't hear, I ask that you join me in contacting our state reps and ask them to come up with the funding. That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
You know, just quickly, I read that in the paper as well, and I'm wondering if there's anything that we as a community can do to send a message to our senator and our representative, maybe in the form even of a resolution or something that would get to the governor. He's just a loose cannon. I'm sorry. He's just, you know, a lot of places are not getting the funding.
Do you want us to draft something for Monday?
I'd like to see us do something. I think we need to make some sort of statement. I know we've since lost her, but we were guardian to a mentally handicapped young woman that went to school up in Lake Zurich. And there was a time when the state owed that school over $1 million, and they were in very, very dire financial straits. And you know, we're hearing more and more of this, and we can't let it continue. We have to make a statement.
What about mayors and managers? I mean, would they be able to step in at all and maybe?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, we're just throwing, or even the IML.
Right.
I mean, you know, the Illinois Municipal League. I mean, it makes no practical sense whatsoever to spend money on things that, you know, I agree, you know, basketball, football, sports are a very big thing. I mean, music's a very big thing in that. But I mean, you have a select amount of people, and not being able to hear, not being able to see, but then not having any place to go to get the help, I think the priorities are really messed up. And I mean, it'd be great if we could do a resolution or a proclamation here, but I mean, maybe, you know, DuPage mayors and managers, or contact somebody at the IML and say, hey, what's wrong with these people?
We can contact those two organizations.
I mean, if you're going to exert the pressure, I mean, get it through the channels that it needs to go through. Mm-hmm. Whether they'll listen or not, who knows? But, I mean, the more you can get on board with it, the better off you are.
Thank you for bringing it up, being the mother of a severely hearing impaired child. I know where you're coming from.
The state of Illinois is broke.
Oh, yeah.
The system is broken.
Right.
I was in Springfield for a meeting with the Illinois Municipal League, and one of the biggest discussions was on the budget. And the budget needs to be completely redone. One of the biggest problems are all of the pension systems for all the different pensions for the state of Illinois need to be looked at, need to be revamped. In terms of funding of pension systems, Illinois is 50th out of 50 states. It is such a dire financial situation that now businesses don't even want to move into the state of Illinois because they're going to be taxed so high. Everybody in Springfield, our legislators, it seems like they're waiting until the next election. They're all doing virtually very, very little to solve any of these problems. And it's really unfortunate for all of us that live here. So hopefully after this next election, something is going to be done to rectify problems like that. But you know, we've got to have the state is so far behind. What is it in our sales tax revenue? Or what, 3 to 4 months behind in getting our money from the
It's
state?
our income tax that has changed. We've been behind for, there's always been a lag in the sales tax, and that's staying about the same. But the income tax, I think, is now 4 months behind, and we never used to be behind in that. And they have not paid a number of bills to other organizations throughout the state.
So after the election, the taxes are going to have to be increased. But even if they increase taxes, that's not going to solve the problem. They have to cut all these programs. They've got to reorganize the state budget. But hopefully those changes will begin to occur after the next election. It's a really sad financial state for all of us.
Back to the manager.
The manager has one more thing he wanted to mention.
I forgot to mention, as many of us know, there was a pretty significant storm that came through a little over a week ago, and in our case, we weren't as affected as dramatically as some of our neighboring communities, but we did have some residents who did experience flooding. We participated in a conference telephone call earlier this week with the County of DuPage's Office of Emergency Management, and there's an effort underway right now to follow through on the governor's declaration of DuPage County as a disaster. There's an effort to try to gather information and see if the federal government will likewise declare DuPage County as a disaster area. And the reason that's important is it could open up some financial support to some of our residents that may have suffered some damage in this storm. So we have some information up on our website. There's a form there. I have received about a half a dozen so far from residences. I do have some also in the back of the room, so if there's anybody here tonight or if you know anybody who did suffer some damage and they want to fill out a form and submit it to us, our deadline is to, I need those back by 1 o'clock this Monday, and it's a real tight time frame, and we've got to get that information over to DuPage County so that they can make their application. So I just wanted to mention that that's out there, and if anybody did suffer damage, please take advantage of that.
Can I put a caveat on that? The forms they're filling out is strictly to help Illinois gather the figures, the numbers together for the damage. If it is declared, which I'm presuming we should be declared a disaster, it's going to be important for everybody to realize that those forms do not get you the federal help. That's strictly to get the county aware of how much damage is in here. So you still will have to, if we are declared, you will still have to sign up and call up with FEMA to be able to register with FEMA. So that's one of the problems that we have when I go out, is everybody thinks when the county, when they gave their address to the county and told them what the damage was, they sit back and think that that's it. And our town cannot give out that information. They'll give it to the FEMA people, but it doesn't register them. You physically have to register once we're declared. So just keep in contact. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of information on the website. And also, because it may take a while to get it going, anybody with damage, please take photos if you can. of the damage and keep track of any receipts that are related to your damage, because I'm sure you're going to want to start the repairs going, and I don't know who is going to qualify or who's not going to qualify for help, but that should help when the inspector comes out, so he can see what the damage was and he can see what the expenses were to replace things, because I don't want people to have to sit there and wait around for weeks before they start doing something. The biggest problem also that I'm always out telling people when I'm with FEMA is the mold is going to get really bad if you've had water. And on the FEMA website, you can go on FEMA.gov and you can get information on how to kill the mold. So you can at least start doing that, but remember to take photos if you can, if it's not too late, and keep any receipt that was related to your loss. Even if you had to evacuate, for some of the towns who had to evacuate, sometimes they get reimbursed depending on their situation if they had to stay at a hotel. So just keep any receipts that have to do it until we find out if we're going to be declared, and it's all on an individual basis when it comes to the residents. So thank you.
And the questionnaire is, as you can see in the back of the room, it's only a 2-page questionnaire, so it's not real detailed at this point. They're just trying to collect the basic information at this point.
Okay, thank you. First item, sprinkler ordinance revision. Or to consider changes in the existing sprinkler ordinance to temporarily allow interior remodeling of existing commercial buildings in the downtown B1 district without triggering the sprinkler requirement if the remodeling does not increase the fire hazard by breaching a firewall. Changes in occupancy which result in a higher fire risk would continue to trigger the sprinkler requirements. Fred Kimball.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Village Board, staff appreciates the opportunity to be here this evening to kind of participate in this discussion, an ongoing discussion, with regard to proposed modifications to the ordinances which regulate the need for fire suppression sprinklers in commercial structures. Based on some direction from the Village Board, an ad hoc group was put together consisting of members of village staff, Economic Development Department, and the Fire Department, as well as representatives of the Chamber of Commerce and the business community to further study this matter. And at the July 2nd, 2010 Committee of the Whole, direction was given by the Village Board to further study the issues related to the duration of changes, how long should these changes in the code last, how should limited remodeling projects affect the need for sprinklers, how should changes in occupancy affect the need to trigger the requirement for sprinklers. And I think we've come up with a list of possible changes to the ordinance, and that is delineated in a sample ordinance before you tonight. And we're very appreciative of the fact that we did have this dialogue with the business community. And we kind of used a mantra that our village attorney has oftentimes given us, and that is that it is possible for two reasonable people or two reasonable groups to examine the same set of facts and circumstances and reach different conclusions. And with that in mind, in the spirit of compromise, we tried to work through several of these changes. The first change that you may see is that with regard to the ordinance, we believe clarification language with regard to this 50 persons greater than restaurant or places of assembly, we would propose to change Section B to state that any restaurant with an occupancy of over 50 persons or any place of assembly with occupancies of over 50 persons serve as a trigger event for the need for commercial fire suppression sprinklers. There was some ambiguity in the way that that section of the code was written before. Did it apply both to places of assembly and to restaurants, one or the other? And we think this makes it crystal clear. And I think we do have agreement here. I won't speak for Mr. Califat, Mr. Forsberg, and Corrine Beller, who participated in this, but we think that gives clarity to the ambiguity that previously existed in the code. Secondly, in paragraph D, a proposal that said changed Section D to read any building over 2,500 square feet that has a change in use to a more hazardous use as determined by the fire department. Examples of more hazardous uses include but are not limited to office or mercantile use to a hardware store or other use where paint thinners, lacquers, or other flammable materials are stored on the property. A change in use from office to mercantile or mercantile to office will not in and of itself trigger the requirement to install sprinklers. again, trying to give a little bit more clarity there. And Bill, Corrine, Larry, I think we do have agreement that, between the staff and the business community that does make sense. Then we get into some of the other areas where some things we might have a little bit of a difference of opinion or respectfully agree to disagree, and that is in Section H. The business community would like to see the following language inserted, whereas the fire department and the ED department have a little bit of a problem with this. But the changed language to Section H would say, further, any interior remodeling of an area representing less than 20% of the total building square footage, not to exceed 600 square feet, shall be permitted without triggering the requirement for sprinklers. Such limited remodeling shall be permitted no more than once every 3 years without triggering the sprinkler requirement. This would be a change that the business community would like to see in the ordinance that would apply village-wide, not just be limited to the downtown business district. And there, as we'll hear from the fire department, I think, a little bit this evening, there is a difference of opinion. With regard to the duration of these changes before a sunset provision would be adopted, staff strongly recommends an 18-month duration period, then a sunset provision, and would recommend that a 90-day review cycle start 90 days prior to the expiration date, whatever is selected by the village board. The business community would like to see that be a longer period of time. They would suggest 36 months. A logical compromise might be 24 months with a 90-day period of review cycle. So that's kind of a basic overview of some of the changes that were discussed by this ad hoc group, and based on the further direction of the board, attempts to clarify the areas that the board felt needed further clarification. Chief Trout, I don't know if you had anything to add, and we'd certainly like to invite Mr. Caliphate, Mrs. Beller, and Larry Forsberg to see if they had any additional comments with regard to the proposed changes that are before the village board here this evening.
Any comments from board members before we go any further?
Just a real quick one. For the purpose of consistency in our village code, I'd like to see the word mercantile changed to retail.
That was the intent of the meeting, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I mean, when we're talking about usages, we refer to retail all the time.
Certainly.
So that we don't have confusion as to when people just pick up a section and it says mercantile, let's make it retail.
I agree,
Sounds
Trustee. I
good.
think mercantile is kind of an archaic term. Retail is perhaps more modern and more understandable.
And in our code.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Okay. Chief Trout.
I believe, just as Fred has said, that we're all working together as a team. The fire department, it's our thoughts of, and it's part of a balancing act of trying to safeguard the community, safeguard the businesses, the people who shop in your stores, and the people who live in our town, and balance that out with the economic downturn that we're in right now. A couple of weeks ago, in the middle of downtown Naperville, they had a fire in the Rosebud restaurant. The restaurant did not have sprinklers, but it did have a hood system over the grill portion of the kitchen, which is required by code. That system was activated when the fire started. The fire got beyond the control of that hood system, got up in between the floors, and basically burnt the building down. Our fire department was there along with 14 other departments in which we fought the fire. Thank God no one was killed. But that is part of what we're trying to worked with the business community in Naperville and Westmont and other local towns of trying to find that balance. And now we have in Naperville a portion of their downtown section is burned out, which then affects all the other stores around it. And we have that type of problem. I believe that when we talked before, we brought up, the fire department did, about what would happen if we had a fire in the downtown section, and how devastating would that be to all the other property, all the other businesses in the downtown area. And you know, Naperville is feeling the effects of that fire, and just thank goodness that we haven't had that experience here. So we're just trying to balance things out, what's in the best interest of the community. We understand we're going through this an economic downturn, but yet at the same time, we basically don't want to give away all of the safety codes that we have, our building codes, for a short-term fix. But we're still willing to work with everyone on this.
Frank, what difference does it make if a building over 2,500 square feet decides to remodel the interior of it up to the 20%, the 600 square feet? What difference does it make before that remodeling happened and after the remodeling happened? What changed that it would make any difference whether those sprinklers were there before or after? If they weren't there before, and all they're doing is moving some walls around, what difference does it make as long as they went through permits and they did everything the way the village wanted it to be done? What more hazardous situation was created by doing that?
I believe that what we did was, when we had this, was to create some triggers in which to try to come up with a safer community. And we thought that when people start to remodel their stores, put money into them, well, that would be a perfect time for them to then initiate putting in a sprinkler system. And so if they're spending money in which to maybe revamp and remodel a store, that might also be a good time in which to do the remodeling too.
But if they don't do anything, they don't have to put the sprinklers in.
No.
I'd rather see it if it's a new person comes in or if they change the use just like that. I'm not quite sure I'm going to be for this just doing the remodeling because they want to attract new businesses in, and it hasn't really changed the scope of the business. It hasn't changed anything except for maybe the layout of it. And as long as there's egress and ingress to get in for fire department and everybody else, I personally just don't see the need. I understand there's a time and a place to increase and make it better for the sprinkler system, you know, to make it more safe. Mm-hmm. But an existing business in this economy today and climate, if they're trying to make it better, they may not make it better because of the cost of the sprinkler system. They'll leave it the way it is. And I think today we need to start thinking about...
I understand what you're talking about. I believe what we were using was the, as I said before, since someone's going to remodel and start putting that type of, you know, tearing down walls and whatnot, it would be easier for them to then add a system to it during those times.
Your Honor, as Chief Trout was talking, it suddenly occurred to me too, I kind of glossed over perhaps the very important part of the changes that were proposed here, and that is that the committee recommends temporarily allowing interior remodeling of existing commercial buildings in the downtown B1 district without triggering the sprinkler requirement if the remodeling does not increase the fire hazard by breaching a firewall. Changes in occupancy which result in a higher fire risk would continue to trigger the sprinkler requirement. So that I guess the recommendation to the staff especially, and to a degree the members of the business community, would be that we allow that relief, shall we say, in the downtown B1 business district, but not in the other areas of the village. The business community would like to see the further relief that's delineated in Section H. Staff has some concerns from a public safety perspective about that, and that's a point on which we respectfully disagree.
Well, if we have a public safety issue with it for the rest of the village, how come we're not so concerned about the downtown area?
Well, we think, Trustee Scott, that there are certain unique characteristics of the downtown that make it just slightly different than some of the other commercial districts in the village of Westmont. At the previous meeting, we talked about how, you know, sometimes the need to install a sprinkler system requires an upgrade of the sizing of the water line that is there. And we think we have a greater number of 1-inch old archaic water lines in the downtown business district than we do in other business districts throughout throughout the rest of the village. So that kind of magnifies the cost to install the sprinkler system for those small mom and pop type businesses in the downtown central business district. Because of those increased costs, we feel that puts the downtown in a little bit of a unique situation as compared to some of the other B2 general business districts in other parts of the village.
Which buildings are more likely to have an issue, the downtown or the newer buildings that are in the outskirts of town? What are the more older buildings that may not have everything up to snuff the way they should be if we were going to have buildings on Ogden Avenue or 63rd Street?
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, the downtown.
So the ones that really need it the worst are the ones we're letting. I don't want to use that word slide by, but get it. But then the rest of them that are in newer buildings, we're telling them they have to do it.
I understand where you're coming from with that, and I know we had several committee meetings at the committee level. We've talked about this at the board level, and from the get-go, I've struggled with having one set of rules for the downtown and one set of rules for everybody else. I kind of went on record saying, this bothers me a little bit, I have trouble with it. And that's why I like what the chamber and the business community has done to letter H, because that does kind of level the playing field a little bit for some of those larger businesses down, on south, on the south end or on the north end of town. These are tough times. I was in Long Grove last week. Long Grove is quite popular for shopping, and I was astounded at the number of empty businesses there. The week before that, I was in downtown Geneva. Just this last weekend, I was in Evanston. I don't really shop that much. I was there for other things. And there's a lot of empty stores all over, and it's always been our policy to do whatever we can do to help our downtown and all of our business owners in Westmont. I think this is I think it's a wonderful ordinance. I think everybody should have sprinklers. I just don't think it's a time when people can really afford it. I'm fine with the changes submitted by the committee. And I certainly respect our fire department and our economic development and understand where they're coming from too, but I just don't think the timing of this is right to ask people to put out, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 when they're just trying to keep their doors open.
And that's why we looked at the downtown as there's smaller shops, people who are just starting in the business world, or even people who have had it for a number of years. And this is part of the balancing act. When you go to 61st and Cass and to the large shopping centers where corporations that not only own businesses in Westmont, shopping centers, but also own large retail places throughout Chicagoland and the United States. And they have a larger base in which to draw from, in which to put money into those businesses on the outskirts where it's newer, and they have that type of money to support those things. Whereas that's why we were looking at the downtown section.
And I understand all of that, and I was at all of those meetings, but the truth of the matter is these people that own the malls, the strip malls, the South, they're not going to put the money in. They're going to pass it on to the people that are there.
Where they're going to leave them
empty
for 20
years.
And
ultimately, at the end of the day, it's going to hurt the business. The little resale, the upscale resale shop that's down on the mall, in the mall by Westbrook Market. I just don't, I'd like to see it continue. I'd like to see it thrive. And I promise you, the owner of that mall is not going to put in the sprinklers for her. It's going to be passed on to her one way or the other. And I just think we need to look out for all of our businesses. I don't care if they're 5,000 square feet or if they're 1,000 square feet. I think we have, the next couple of years, we have to be very, very cognizant of the troubles that they're having and do everything we can, to help them with that. We all want sprinklers, but I just don't think this is the time.
I think that, this has been on the in front of us for a long time, relatively. So I've given it a lot of thought and saying, well, if you have the money to remodel, or you have the money to finally do you have the seed money to finally open your store that you always wanted to do, and by the way, now you have to come up with the money to put in the sprinkler, is akin to saying somebody who just bought their first house and they're eking by, and because they bought a couch, now they have to put on a new roof and new siding or brick. Because, hey, you bought the house, now you really got to put out the dough. It discourages people. I don't like the trigger of, if you're going to spend any money, you're going to have to spend a lot of money. I don't like differentiating between different businesses in this village. I don't think anybody deserves preferential treatment, and certainly downtown is the highest at risk because of the propensity that if a fire starts in downtown Westmont, it's going to spread, and it's because the buildings have party walls, and you know, it would be a disaster. What I would like to see is that in this economic climate, we go out our 36 months, which puts every building owner on notice to start budgeting. I said it at the last meeting that this has been in effect over a year. It's coming. Change is coming, and it's going to be expensive. But if you're going to be a commercial landlord, you're on notice, start budgeting. I would also like to see us get pricing for what it takes to change the 1-inch water main going down Cass to the appropriate type of piping. How much would that cost for the village to at least give them a shot in the arm by making the water available, and then into their business and in through their business becomes their responsibility? But no business owner should bear the cost of infrastructure. And I would like to see our grant writer extraordinaire see if there is a grant funding in order to do this. It is definitely a safety issue. So despite my prior comments about, and I recognize, Frank, truly I do, the issue of firefighter safety and saving lives. Honest, I do. And that tough decisions would have to be made if there is a fire under the current conditions, that the grave loss of property on Cass Avenue would have to be chosen over potential loss of a firefighter's life. I understand that.
Our position on that is that we will risk a life to save a life.
Not property.
We will not. We will take certain challenges when we fight these fires. Every time we go out, and whether it's a single-family home or a business or whatever, there's always that potential. But we will risk a life to save a life, and you know, for clarification, and Steve May will probably have better information than I, but the main on Cass Avenue is not a 1-inch main. It's just the tap-ins to some of these older businesses are 1 inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch. Some may be larger, but the main going down Cass Avenue, I believe, is about 8 to 10 in that area.
Yeah, I mean, it's the water services that are the issue now.
Okay. Because then I misunderstood. I thought there was the water supply was pretty bad.
Just the supply to the those individual businesses. Steve?
Well, what side of the street is the main on?
Well, that's all part of it. So they're all going to be different prices. If I can go to any different location to describe what's different about downtown is, let's even pick Ogden Avenue. It's a big wide road. If the water main was on the other side of the street, they might have an expensive time to push the water main underneath the road, but you dig a pit on each side and you do it, and you can physically deal with it. On Cass Avenue, if you're on the wrong side of the street, there are no parkways, or the buildings are 0 setback, there's no physically room to work. So everybody on the opposite side of the street from the water main almost has no choice but to open cut the road to tap the main, bring it across the street into the building. So I don't really have the number with me. I mean, if anybody can remind me what I said last time we were talking about this, but it was about $20,000, $30,000 just to go from the water main to the building, and that was before you did any interior plumbing. So the expense comes in with the difficulty in the room to work, in the narrow right-of-way. It's all paved.
Which side of Cass has the main?
The hydrants are all on the west side of the street.
And no way to bring a main over to the other side or an offshoot to it?
Well, that's what the services are, but you would physically have to build a second water main down the other side of the street. And not to speak against that, but there's a lot of stuff in the right-of-way. So if, you know, between sewers and other utility that's in there, there's not necessarily I can't say that that's practical even if we could afford it.
Okay.
What about down the alley?
So, I mean, every property is variable, but you know, the east side of the street's far more expensive than the west side of the street.
What about down the alley? Is it doable?
Well, I'll just say no, because
Okay.
the sanitary sewers are in the alley, and the EPA, it's more complicated than this, but you need 10 foot of separation, and it's only a 16-foot wide alley, and the sanitary sewer is right down the center of it. So there's no room for anything in the alley except the sanitary sewer. All the utilities are on poles in the back, you know, it's...
Yeah, I mean, it's a unique situation. Now, the trigger thing here is 2,500 square feet. I guess maybe if my brain had been working a little bit better prior, instead of going through everything that we're going through right now, kick the number back to 5,000 for the next 3 years. You have a 5,000 square foot situation. Anything over 5,000 square feet is going to have to be sprinkled. That's what it was prior to being dropped down to 2,500 square feet. If you kick it back up to 5,000, put a 3-year limit on it. And then after the 3 years, or maybe 2 years, I don't know, see what's going on, roll it back to the 2,500 square feet. The biggest problem that I can see with the sprinkler issues, be it our downtown or anybody's downtown, is that when you have separate landowners, okay, we all know that the least amount of money you have to put into a property, and the more rent you can get for it, more money you're going to make. Now, I'm going to play the flip side of this card. If I was a building owner in this town, and I was faced with having to put a sprinkler system in, and I had to burrow under Cass Avenue to get it done, my first reaction would be, myself, is, number one, what is the actual value of the building that I have sitting there if I were to sell it in today's market? Number two, will I ever recoup my cost incurred by doing this, even though that I know by a certain point in time I am going to be required to put smokes and that into the building? Based on today's economics, the way it is right now, it would be more prudent for me to try to sell that building or get on it from underneath it, or hopefully, you know, maybe lower the rent a little bit, or even just leave it empty and let it go. Because the cost incurred here, which, I mean, I've talked to Public Works about this. I mean, you're talking, and he's right, $25,000 just to get the service to the building. And then, I mean, you know, Frank, we've talked along with Doug Daniels and several of the others that the cost of just a bare bones system or a sprinkler system, especially when you have to go into a building and retrofit it, it's going to cost you more in labor and time because it's an existing structure and you have to go through more things in order to get this put in the building. So your cost, labor-wise, is going to go up. Your time is going to go up. And by the time you're done, in most of these buildings, I say you're probably looking at anywhere between $35,000 and $50,000. As a landlord that owns one of those buildings down there, I'd say not a chance. because I'm not going to recoup it, even if I rent that building out at a decent rate or a prime spot. I mean, even if it's a prime spot, just from that side of the coin, spending that amount of money is not economically feasible. So I guess what I'm proposing is, we've done a lot of work and a lot of time has been put into this. Move it back to 5,000 square feet in either 2 years or 3 years. Then we drop this thing down to 2,500 square feet, and that's it. There is no more discussion. We drop it back. I mean, I don't know any other way to attack this. I mean, it's a case of, yes, everybody's hurting in this economic climate. The mayor brought up a very good point. This state is broke. How many businesses want to come into a state that's in the shape it's in? It's very frustrating for everybody. At village level, at county level, state level, whatever, people who live in this village, we try to give them the best things that we can. I guess my whole point to this is, no matter what we do, there's going to be arguments on both sides of this. And I guess what I'm saying is, the proposal I'm making is take it back to 5,000 square feet, hold it at that point for a period of time, and then roll it back, whether the economy comes back or not.
Lee, are you saying roll it back to 5,000 square feet with triggers, or 5,000 square feet needs to be sprinkled?
Yeah, clarify. What are you saying?
5,000 square feet. Anything over 5,000 square feet has to be sprinkled.
With no triggers to prevent it?
Well, based on what we used to have, what were those triggers?
So you're saying
it was 5,000 when it was 5,000 square feet.
That's just it. If they're 5,000 or bigger, they need to be sprinkled.
They got to be sprinkled.
Right. I'm not ready to loosen it that much. I think we do have to have, I think that's too much. I can live with 2,500. To go backward, I'm happy with compromise, but I don't want to go backwards. But I just don't think we should move in the past.
Here's the whole thing.
I mean, that's just my thought.
Right, but I mean, what I'm saying is, what we're doing now is, we've got more paragraphs, more wording, more breakdowns, and what triggers it, what doesn't trigger it, what percentage.
Well, I think it's pretty clear.
Well,
this makes it, I think it's very clear right now.
All I'm saying
Long time
is
to get to this, but I think it's clear now.
Then I think the unfortunate scenario is going to fall into play, that I think you're going to see what you've got now, and I'm not real convinced that we're going to see much of anything else come in. Be it 2,500 square feet or 5,000 square feet, either one, okay? I mean, it's just, right now, it's a bad business climate. Granted, we're trying to do everything we can to help the building owners, but the other thing that I have to say, and I'm going to say it, the building owners have to step up to the plate and make some sign of something that, here we are, we're trying to help this, but you know what, gang? Step up to the plate on the other side. I mean, we're trying to help every way we can to get this done and help the building owners get occupancy in their buildings and that. But guess what? Go clean up your building. Straight up, just paint it, whatever. It doesn't matter. But I mean, the way some of them look now.
When we're putting together this information for you tonight, and I want to make sure that everyone understands where the fire department is coming from. And if it sounds like at times I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, is because I want to make sure that you all get all the perspectives. As we talked about at our meetings, I would rather see an occupied store in downtown Westmont than an unoccupied. An occupied store will be maintained, taken care of, there'll be people there. It's less of a fire hazard. And so while I want that, I also want the fire safety end. And that's why it's a struggle for you, and it's also a struggle on our end, and it's a struggle for the business community too. And that's why we're here before you tonight, for your infinite wisdom and knowledge. And you'll be able to, hopefully, we'll all be able to work together on this and come up with something. And if we, you know, if we have to go back to the drawing boards and maybe work at it again, I'm always willing to do that.
I think what everyone is saying is making a lot of sense, and to just put it in a tidy little capsule, I think Ellen said it well. You know, we've got this 3-year window. We know this is horrible. We're jumping through hoops, doing everything we can to help, and we've got a 3-year window. But guess what? At the end of 3 years, everybody has to ante up and get, you know, the sprinklers, non-negotiable. And honestly, even the business community is willing to, I'm not speaking for them, but I kind of got the sense through some of our meetings that they'd be okay with that. You know, make it synonymous with the smoke heat. They can plan for it, as Ellen said, start planning, saving. You know, I like the way it's been rewritten by the business community and the chamber. I like the idea of the 36 months, and I especially like what Ellen said about that's where the buck's going to stop then. At 36 months, guess what? When that date comes into play, everybody has sprinklers.
Can I ask something that to me is a little confusing? We're going to allow people to come in and not have to put sprinklers in, but at the end of 3 years, they have to put them in, or only when they remodel or move at the end of 3 years, they're now under that caveat where they're going to have to do it. Are we going to say 3 years is up, even though you've been in your business for 3 years, we're going to make you tear apart and put sprinklers in? Or are you saying only when that business moves after 3 years or remodels after 3 years? I'm kind of confused on where you're going with this. You keep saying 3 years, and to me, you're saying 3 years, we're going to make them tear out their ceilings and put the sprinklers in?
Yeah, I mean, that's,
whether they
that's
remodel
what,
or not.
That's the way it was written originally.
What was written originally about when they changed or remodeled, didn't it?
There had to be a trigger.
There was a trigger.
Well, the
So
triggers, of course.
If you have
but
an
not,
existing.
But not, I mean, we'd have to revisit, you know, the 20%. I mean, this is pretty loose. Granted, this is a pretty loose ordinance right now. So, at the end of 3 years, sprinklers go in.
If they remodel or do something, is what you're saying.
Right. These
That's what I'm trying to find out.
Exactly.
It's not that everybody who moved in.
No, it's not like all of a sudden you shut down your business and put sprinklers in.
The triggers will go back to if they do something, they have to put them in.
Right.
Yeah, you're asking the same question that we asked of Lee with the 5,000. Is it an all or nothing? And
exactly.
I seem to, at least I believe, think that in 3 years, now the triggers are going to come into play. There's no more fooling around. We've established the triggers. Let's go.
Now, 3 years is when this smoke heat thing takes effect. Why is it waiting 3 years for that? Is it not available or what?
No, the fire department wanted to give the business community time in which to prepare to put in their the fire alarm systems. What we're talking about is either the smoke and heat detectors in all businesses. And we gave them up to 2013 in which to do that. Some businesses are taking advantage in doing it right away. Other people are saving up and putting it in when they can prior to 2013.
And
so
how much would it cost to do a smoke heat approximately?
Depends upon the size of the business. And so, that we give them a list of reputable companies in which to choose from, and we let each business then work out whatever would be required.
I actually think it answered your question, Pat. Corinne, didn't you have some numbers on the smoke heats?
While she's coming up, let me just add, it's possible in 3 years that the board will decide that there will be no triggers, it will be universal. Say there's a handful of buildings that are now, they've now been vacant for 6, 8, 9 years, and they say, wait a minute, enough's enough. Now they're just a dry tinderbox, you're gonna sprinkle it or tear it down. So, but as it stands now, triggers.
Yeah, good point.
Hi, I'm Corinne Beller, part of the ad hoc committee and part of this discussion. And basically, thanks for considering all our changes here. I think it's vital, as we all said, the economy's bad. If we can start getting new people interested in the property and want to put money into the property and fix up the properties, will have a better chance of getting businesses into those properties. That's where the money should be spent at this time. I did 2 properties and compared a sprinkler system without, I didn't have the plumbing part, the street tear up, but everybody told me 20 to 25,000. Didn't make any difference, you know. If it's on one side of the street, it's 25,000. If it's on the other side of the street, it's 20,000. So, as far as the sprinklers, so they're between $35,000 and $50,000 for the 2 buildings. One was Dr. Cole and Dr. Baker's building, which is 5,400 square feet, and that was $25,000 without the plumbing, so it'd be $50,000. One was 36 North Cass, which is suburban Candid. It was suburban Candid. That was also $22,000, and that building's about 3,500 square feet. The smoke heats, 2 things are nice about the smoke heats. One, there's no plumbing issue, and it's a cleaner install for the property owner. So you're talking about existing businesses, possibly. You said give 3 years, 2013. They'll have existing businesses. They're going to have their finished walls. You don't incur that kind of destruction that a sprinkler system would incur by installing it. So it's a clean. It's like some kind of electrical unit.
So a smoke heat can go in without a disruption of business, where sprinklers, you'd have to close down your business for
exactly.
how long it takes.
You've got water going through those pipes, and it's harder to put that type of install. And so I think the smoke heats. By the way, I'll give you a little example of what smoke heats. The smoke heats were $9,000 for the smaller building, and $21,000 for the larger building. And the reason the difficulty with smoke heats is depending upon Chief Daniels, and we really have to sit down with and find out exactly how he wants it installed. Because the gentleman who did this, the quote for the doctor's buildings, said, well, I have to do every single room. I said, you do? I mean, they have 9 operatories, 9 exam rooms. So it got to be very expensive. And I'm not sure that's really needed. So we really have to sit down with that as well. But smoke heats, I have a building that I own that has both sprinklers and smoke heats. Smoke heats because it was insisted upon for the type of tenancy I have in that particular property. And the tenant lit 4 candles on a birthday cake 2 weeks ago, and the fire department came. So it's pretty sensitive. 4 candles in their kitchen area, and the fire department was there. So I think, hopefully, Frank, that will solve our problem. If the smoke heats work that well.
No candles.
So I do think that we need the 36 time frame, because to sell a building, to remodel the building, or to sell the building and the new owner has to find tenants, and he's not, or she or he will not remodel that property until they know what tenant's going in there. Because how can you remodel? You don't know what you're going to get. They might need a wall, they might not need a wall, they might need a door, whatever. That's going to take time in this economy. So that 2013 time frame will work perfectly for the smoke heats and whatever else that's needed.
Corinne?
Yes.
Being a landlord, should you, let's say you went to put your building up and you knew it was going to have to be sprinkled eventually, are all the landlords going to be honest when they sell the building and warn the new buyer that in the next 3 years, when they go in to do something, they're going to have to spend $30,000? Or is this something that's going to slip under the table, like a lot of people who don't claim that their basements flood?
That
Buyer
wouldn't be.
beware, too.
There's nothing, there's nothing, I mean,
That's the
nothing that-
due diligence of the person purchasing the property.
When you have a property inspected, if your inspector is familiar with the towns, they usually look at the code and tell you everything you're going to need that needs to be done.
Yeah, it is buyer beware, but it is, a good, you know, a good attorney should help you with that as well. So, any other questions?
Does that mean Ginny should not light her birthday cake tonight?
Not in my baby.
That could really set a blaze.
No.
Ladies and gentlemen of the committee and all, I'm Dr. Cole. My partner, Dr. Baker's over there. All of this is very enlightening. However, I think we should evaluate what type of nature the business is. For example, we have dental suites, which means there's a lot of dental equipment, and anything that produces water and hits the equipment knocks out all our electronics. So besides the cost of the sprinklers, we have a complete replacement of everything that's in that building. And in my situation, last time I was here, we were talking, or I suggested the possibility of heating, a heat sensor and a smoke sensor being a better solution than the water. Water, as the fire official said, never really saved the life. However, it does damage everything in that foundation, in that building, whereas a smoker might get, or smoke or heat might get the fire department personnel there in a much quicker manner than they would by the time the water system executes and destroys everything in there. So there's a lot to decide here, and it's not just a matter of cost. Cost is going to be reevaluated and go higher, and you're going to lose a lot of potential businesses coming in here to either buy and renovate or buy and do from the original source. Thank you.
Well, if there's a fire insurance would cover that.
Oh, fire insurance would cover that?
There's clarification on that. As far as a sprinkler building, they have like a 98% life-saving capability. Not that sprinklers never save a life. That's maybe an old thought, but statistics do not bear it up. There's at least a 98% life-saving capability with a sprinkler building.
Wow. What about the heat and smoke detectors? What's the percentage of life-saving with them?
I don't have the numbers on that, but if there's a good system in, and that's why we're supporting the 2013 deadline for heat and smoke detectors in all of our businesses. Of course, if they're activated, that's going to evacuate the building. The alarms will go off, notify the fire department, and then we'll respond to it. There have been cases, of course, where the alarm system goes off, and we have to go in and make a rescue, or if we find someone that still wasn't able to get out, then you do have that problem. That's why in the majority of the fires that sprinklers are involved in, there's a 98% life-saving capability.
My name is Al Kohout, and I'm a building owner and a tenant, so I have a couple of things to say. I want to say one thing about Dr. Corrine. I was a tenant in Corrine's building. I think she's a tremendous landlord, by the way. I just wanted to use her as a guide for I had my building. But I will tell you, she had sprinklers in the building. I feared every day that they'd go off on my electronic equipment. So what the doctor says is really true. It does play havoc if something would happen there. But I'm really, you know what, I can't argue with having protection in the buildings at all. I think it's really important. I am next to probably the oldest restaurant on the block. And don't think I don't wonder if anybody's inspected that place, okay? And I think it's really important. So, you know, that's a concern of mine over there. But I would really ask that we take a real look, and I'm speaking really for downtown, because downtown is your heart and soul. And you know what? I've been participating in the car shows. I have a table out there. We're entitled to do that ever since it began this summer, and people are always walking by and asking what's going on. You've heard that story for years. I've owned my building for 9 years now. I mean, I love being down there. I don't want to be anywhere else, but the thing is, people wonder. And you've got to really look after these mom and pop shops like I am and wonder what would happen if we all said, we're getting out of here because we can't afford to be here. Whether we own the building or our tenants there, the cost is going to be incurred somewhere. So anything you could do to delay something like this in favor of getting more businesses in there, anything to do to think about that, I really appreciate the understanding of the economic concerns that you all have, and it does my heart good to know you care. And I would like to just go on record and say I appreciate that and ask for some support and some time. Thank you.
What do you think about the 3-year timeline that's been brought up for?
Well, I would like to see the whole thing go away, but I think in fairness, we want to extend it as far as possible. I mean, no one knows what the economy is. I mean, I don't know if I bought my building 9 years ago. I have no clue if I made money or lost at this point. Okay, but as it's been said, am I going to recoup $50,000? Probably not. Okay, so I'm really being realistic about this too, and I know that I mean, there's been comments made about the type of building owners in this town. I'm really proud of the way we maintain our building. I would take care of it. We paved parking lot in the moment we had that building. We really think it's really important to have a good look out there. I'm all for that. So I think it's really difficult to just make a blanket statement that people are not going to be affected by it or start saving some money up. At one time, I looked at consider putting apartments upstairs, and that was at least going to be $50,000, and I couldn't do that. So to double that on me, it would be more empty space. And you got people out here who contribute and get involved. The activities are downtown. You really understand these are the people who care, who give back to the community, who are out there, who get involved. Your big box stores, they don't do that. They don't get involved in the chambers, and you got the car dealers who have much more deeper pockets. We care about everybody, but our downtown area really needs to support business-wise and support financially and to look after us. So that's my answer. 3 years is the minimum. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Bill Califoot. I'm at 205 North Cass Avenue. I just want to also echo the thank you to the staff and the board for taking a look at this and stuff. I think Fred and his staff did a great job on the clarifications in the ordinance. The only thing I would request to also have clarified in the original ordinance, both of the dates for that, we're talking that 2013 date of October 1st, 2013. In the ordinance, it's written 2012. And I know that that was said that it was a typo. And I think now is probably the best time to kind of clean that up at the same time. The only other comments that I have real quick just with that whole H paragraph, tough paragraph to try to deal with and stuff. And some of the, Trustee Emery talked about the downtown businesses being so close together and stuff like that. I'm not sure if that's more of a hazard than like a strip mall where they don't have the firewalls all the way up, where once it gets into the ceiling, it's spreading all the way across. I almost think it's harder to jump from building to building in the downtown area was kind of what we were talking about and thinking about in the downtown area there for that special clause for that. But I'm also, I would like to see it trigger on that 2013 date also, just to put everything in, knowing that we're all going to have the safety in there of the smoke and heat by that time too.
Do you have, what's the square footage of your building?
Oh, that's the other thing. My building's about 1,400 square feet, not including the basement, so I'm about 28. And I did get estimates for smoke and heat anywhere from 6,000 to 8,000. Okay. Put it in my building. So, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Good evening. Also, I want to echo the thank you to the village board, to the committee and the fire department for all the work done on this ordinance. The chambers worked pretty hard to get the word out to all our members on this. We've sent out information to all of our members and asked for feedback, and you can see we've got some representatives here tonight who are expressing their concerns and thoughts and recommendations. We have a lot of folks here from the downtown business district, which is the heart and soul of our community. So as we look at this, based on the feedback we've got, we would like very much to see this 36 months out from this point to go into effect with smoke and heat detectors. And there's so many variables involved in this process, it's hard to kind of figure out what is going to be the most opportune time to put these things into effect. Nobody has a crystal ball, but we think at least that gives us a fair amount of time to prepare for the changes required by this type of requirement, because the cost magnitude is huge, and it's going to take time to prepare for it. Again, thank you for the opportunity. The Chamber values the dialogue that occurs in these type of discussions, and it's important to bring all these facts and thoughts and minds to the table, if you will, to come to these type of consensus opportunities. Thank you.
So you're happy, for the most part, with the revisions as were presented
well,
by Fred tonight?
To echo Bill's comments, Section H is, with those trigger points, it's very difficult to look at each one of those. The movement of a door or a window, in some cases, isn't always a substantial change. It wouldn't necessarily probably require a need for a sprinkler system, but when you look at all the community as a whole, we can certainly understand why that's written in that way. So I'm not sure how we can better prepare to address those type of concerns, because I know there's a wide number of buildings out there that we have to consider. So to answer your question, I guess maybe is the answer. It's going to be better than what we've had originally, considering this economic climate. And when we first started looking at this project, our major overarching concern was vacancies, what this would do to our community in terms of vacancies. And it may drive existing businesses that are here that are required to make changes out of business, and it could possibly prevent businesses from coming into town. And the Chamber is very focused on trying to recruit more businesses to our community. Economic development is a core part of what we're all about here. So anything we can do to help support economic development in our community, that's what we're all about. Okay. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
When I see it empty, of course, I step up. And I just want to make sure that the board, and along with the business community, understands too that a couple of years ago when I heard, when we looked into some of the codes, some of the things that bothered me were the fact that a person came to me and said, well, look, I want to upgrade. I only have enough money to do one thing, to upgrade the electrical system in my business. But if I upgrade the electrical system, I can't. That's going to trigger me putting in a fire system. I can't do both. What I told him is I'd love to see him upgrade the electrical, because then that takes out a lot of the fire hazard. That's one of the things we addressed.
We did adopt that change.
Right, and so now we adopted that change. So we're working, that's what I want to make sure that everyone understands, that we're working with the business community to do the very best job we possibly can.
I think the other thing is that after 3 years, if people come in and they say, well, I'm doing this and technically it's a trigger, and here's exactly what I'm doing. For example, let's just say Marco Tambour, who just is going to do his salon, comes in and says, I don't like the window that has all the little panes in it. I'm now going to do just a plain picture window, but it would trigger sprinkling. The village board's going to listen to that. Is it something where, now he's been, like Pat said, for 3 years, is it something that, the building owner should now have to sprinkle the whole thing? I think we're going to be looking at variances and people coming in and saying, can you give me a break? We can't predict it, but we have to have something on the books. We can always, that's why
Trustee, in the example that you just gave, I don't think even under the old way that would have triggered the sprinkler.
It was just off the...
Yeah, okay, sorry.
Yeah, we want to make sure that, that people understand that if they do, let's just say, put a window in, the fire service might, and the building department might say, hey, that's fantastic, because that's just one more way in which to ventilate or to possibly to remove people from the building. So it would be a positive thing rather than a trigger to activate the sprinkler system. And so That, that's the positive stuff. If you're putting in a law that would be something positive that you're doing, then that would not trigger the system. If it was a negative thing, then it would possibly do that.
The breach of the firewall, I think, is the concerning thing for staff here. We don't want to see that because that does compromise the fire safety of a building. But absent that kind of a modification, we're much less concerned from a safety standpoint about those kinds of cosmetic remodeling, shall we say.
So what do we vote on Monday night?
Three-year suggestion?
Well,
And what else?
my recommendation is that we go with the recommendation of the chamber and the business community and make the appropriate changes to H. I'm comfortable with that. I don't know how everyone else feels. Definitely the change we made in I and in B and D. I mean, basically everything that we have in the memo, I'm comfortable with.
John, is it possible to component it out for vote? Because like Trustee Fleming said, he would like to see the 2,500 square feet backed up to 5,000 and put the various things that are subject to different viewpoints out as components for voting.
Yeah.
Sure. We can list them.
Section by section, or?
Yeah, 1, 2.
Do we feel that there's a need for that?
Well, I think it's just a matter of the square footage and possibly the date, the sunset date. So the rest of them probably could all fall into one. It could possibly
that
be
it?
three things. Would that help?
Yeah, as long as nobody has another, that they're disagreeing with certain of the revisions to the trigger provisions or anything. Lee, are you okay with it in those two regards, or is there something else?
The only thing I'm not comfortable is with this 20%. And you can, what was it, 20% every 3 years? Mm-hmm. Okay, all right.
This will be up in 3 years.
It can go up to 60%.
It'll be up in 3 years anyway, so
Right.
it's not, I mean, that's something that.
I mean, the biggest hurdle on this thing is breaching a firewall.
And Trustee Fleming, the thing that you mentioned, Bill Caliphate and I, that was, I think, probably the hardest part we had to get through on that, and I'll let Bill, talk.
One of the discussions that I had with Fred was, pulling it outside of the downtown business district when you're looking at all the other businesses in the community. We understand that there are some out there that are a big concern to the fire department, and we had to be careful, that to kind of allow some of those businesses that are the way that, let me go back, the way that H is written now for the trigger point without that 20% and stuff like that would be if there's a vacant space out there and a tenant wants to come in and change these two 10 by 10 offices to one 10 by 20 office, and all they're doing is taking that wall down in between those two offices, according to H, that would trigger an entire sprinkler system. And that's what Fred and I were kind of talking about, were some of those other vacancies outside of the downtown area that are for lease or to get somebody in there that just wants to do minor changes to the build out that's going to adapt that space for that new business going in. Is 20 and 600 the right numbers? I guess that's up to you guys to discuss, and I think we came up with that. If you look at, if the space is over 5,000 square feet, whatever they do is going to trigger sprinklers anyway. So we're talking about those spaces that are basically between that 2,500 and 5,000, correct? Oh, no, it's anything over 2,500.
Right.
So it does, and that's why I think we were looking at that 600 to kind of cap that 20%. So you're not getting into this 10,000 square foot space that they're going to be able to do 20% without triggering it.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we were kind of coming up with those numbers, but it was
To do minor jobs, yeah.
Right, to do minor stuff to an existing building that's just changing a tenant in there.
But that's like,
So-
Sue's example of the resale shop down at 63rd and Cass, or the strip mall that's largely vacant by the Jockey Club. If you have one tenant that does something that triggers it, under the current code and even what we're proposing, it triggers sprinkling for the entire building. And are we fair with that? Isn't that discouraging individual tenants from coming in or remodeling?
Well, that's why the 20% rule was suggested as a.
20% is of the entire square footage?
One of the other things that we talked about, which I guess comes to legal, is, is there a way to define this out when you're getting outside of the downtown area of single standalone buildings compared to attached units? I don't know if if legally you can write it differently for the different types of buildings, but that would cover, that strip mall type of thing where somebody's coming in that just wants to move one wall in that 2,500 or 3,000 square foot space in this 20,000 square foot strip mall.
Well, obviously, it's in there about attached dwelling units. One duplex will require it.
But I think that's new construction is the way.
Yeah, but I'm just saying is that it's also focused on the type of building as well as the construction date.
But I don't think the remodeling, that whole H paragraph, that's what I'm talking about, is if you could split that H paragraph to two different versions for a standalone building compared to something that has attached units, which could cover what, like what you're talking about of that entire building to be done that way.
For different districts or size of building?
Yeah, I mean, if there's a reasonable basis for differentiating, you can do so. I mean, you can differentiate in the downtown business district compared to the rest of town because it's a business redevelopment district. You're trying to promote redevelopment. You're operating under a state statute in that regard. It has unique concerns with the age and infrastructure and cost to remodel. So I think that's the justification for doing the district, and you can likewise differentiate between buildings, size of buildings, et cetera. I think that's how most towns set it up in some form or another.
But all we're dealing with here tonight is the downtown B1 district.
Oh, no.
No.
No, no.
I think, Your Honor, in paragraph H, if the additional
covers
language is
everybody.
added to paragraph
Okay,
H, that would apply to all other zoning districts as well.
Because of this age.
And that's the reason that we kind of came up with that as another
That
option to
20%,
consider.
600, yeah.
Well, see, that's why I wanted the clarification on the 20% of the 600 square feet. Now, I'm still a little confused. If, let's say, that strip mall down there at 61st and Cass, if he takes two spaces into one, removes one wall.
How big?
Which is basically all it would be.
It is.
You know.
He has a drawing.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. We don't need the drawing for this.
My question is, now, are you saying 20% of the entire square footage of the property, or are you saying 20% of the particular space within that property?
I think what Fred and I were talking about was the example I used. If you had a 10 by 10, two offices 10 by 10, you've got 200 or 100 square feet that you're doing, because you're taking one office, the 10 by 10, and I'm removing one wall. That's the construction space that I'm working at. So that's how it would be differentiated. One of the things we talked about in the strip malls was, is there a way to write it where it's between the firewalls? Because all those spaces have firewalls between the spaces. So, if you're breaching that firewall, I don't know.
I don't know that.
Well, that was going to be my question, and shame on me for not knowing this answer, but with a strip mall, do we require that each unit within the mall have firewalls on each side? Is that a requirement? When we build a strip mall, or
I think, trustee,
do we require firewalls between the businesses, or do we say you can put up drywall? Whatever.
Basically, it would come in as a new structure, and if they, just like a large, the Jewel doesn't have firewalls, they have firewall. The only firewall in the Jewel is between the Jewel food store and the occupancy next door. Yes.
Well, that's my question,
Yes.
between businesses.
But that's how it was built that way.
The building is required to be sprinkled if it's a new building. The problem is that we have, I think, trustee, is in some of these older strip malls, we have non-firewall demising walls and no sprinklers. that quite frankly scares the heck out of staff.
Right,
That scares me, too.
Yeah,
I mean,
because a fire demising wall does not.
well, no, I understand that,
Right, but I mean, that's why I'm asking the question that I'm asking here.
well, and we had a lot of, remember, we had discussions
Right.
about this at our first meeting. How do you differentiate?
You know.
You were, as drafted, it says any interior remodeling of an area representing less than 20% of the total building square footage.
Not to exceed 600.
Not to exceed 600. If you have a 5,000 square foot building, which isn't all that big, it's Dr. Cole's size building, 20% is 1,000 square feet.
Right.
So there isn't a decent-sized building in this town that it won't trigger the entire building to be sprinkled.
But it would allow some minor remodeling to combine offices or remove walls to make some offices bigger.
Right, but what I'm saying is it does not allow one tenant to come into a strip mall or one tenant to come into, you know, part of a building. Because Al, your building, like, you know, the photographer came in upstairs, it's going to trigger it. It's going to trigger in a strip mall, like is it 61st and Cass, one tenant to come into one of those stores with the way that it is set up at 20%, not to exceed 600 square feet.
That is correct.
There isn't a building in this town that isn't going to have to
Ask a
to be
question so I can understand
sprinkled.
what you're describing here. This is that strip mall you've been referencing.
Right.
Okay, it's a 30,000 square foot building. It was originally built with several firewalls that break it up into fire zones. That's how the building was built under codes at that time. The tenant we were contemplating for this space here is 2,000 square feet. The change we were permitting to make was to remove the wall that was the non-bearing, non-firewall between two tenants. So how do you classify that? Does that become now a 2,000 foot, and it's obviously more than the 600 square feet, or do I take the square footage of the wall within the 2,000 feet? I mean, it's undefined. It's very vague. And as I've listened to your description tonight, I don't know that I can understand. Really, does this now trigger it still?
Yes.
Or have you made provisions?
Yes.
That
change that you've proposed would still trigger the sprinkler requirements if the village board adopted the proposed changes to Section 8 that are a part of this memo.
Then we still object to it as we did in the past.
So the
It offers
biggest.
no relief to us, and we were the prime example.
Right.
You trying to stimulate business, and we have a tenant that we're now last thread of holding on to, and this ordinance still does not address our concerns.
The largest building that would fall within that 20% remodeling and not be triggered, because you can't go over 600 feet, is 2,999 square feet. That's not a very big building.
Okay.
Because 20% of 3,000 square feet is 600 square feet, and that puts you over.
You know, one thing many other codes do to determine compliance with newer codes is
Please identify
construction
yourself,
costs.
sir.
I'm Don Dybus. I represent Intercontinental Development. And what they do in many other codes is that they establish trigger points based on construction value compared to replacement cost. So if you were saying 20% of the value of that square footage of that space, we would be well under it with taking out one interior non-bearing partition. But if you say 20% of the square footage limited to 600 square feet, I agree with you. I think there's going to be very few people who can comply with that.
And I guess at that point, then staff is going to say, how are we ever going to get this strip mall sprinkled?
Exactly. That's an issue. And strip malls, it's a whole different.
In 3
Public
years,
safety
we'll be
reasons, yeah.
looking at that.
In 3 years, it's going to have to be sprinkled. There is no option.
Because it's over 5,000 square feet.
That's right.
3 years is a long time, but not that long, and we don't have a crystal ball to say whether or not the economy is going to get worse or better.
Right.
And also, some of us might not be here
in
3 years. And so, you know, there's a lot of ifs out there. Let's just say that if the economy doesn't get better, everyone's back. Let's just say everyone in this room is back, but the economy isn't better. As a matter of fact, it's actually gotten worse, and we're actually losing more downtown spaces.
But you're missing something very important.
What are we doing?
They're on notice to start saving now, and in 3 years, everybody should have the money to do it.
Well, that is if the economy just holds, but wonder if the economy gets worse and people can't save, people are losing stores,
right?
All right, which is all very, very possible. And so it's something that, you know, we talked about triggers before. We talked about flags coming up, you know, 5 or 6 months before the deadline. There's a lot of different things we talked about.
You can't govern on what ifs and what's going to happen. You got to govern on facts. And that's the fact right now is the economy is no good.
Right.
It may not be any good in 5 years. Got to govern on what it is now.
Right. If we have to change something, we change it.
Right.
You do what you have to do.
Yep.
Okay, listening to everybody.
And now?
No, I just have a couple comments. Chief, you said it. A store that's filled is a safer. It's going to be safer, and that's what we want. The whole community wants. The village board. We want these stores to be viable stores in our downtown and all throughout the community. So that's an issue, and we want to make it safer. If we can't make it safer by adding the sprinklers at this time, again, Chief, you explained it. Would you put in the sprinklers or the electrical system? How do you make it safer? Do the electrical system. That's if you got to do one or the other. If you're going to make it safer, can you put in? I was asking Trustee Seneca, can you put in a firewall? I don't know.
In a strip mall.
In a strip mall, if it's not there. I mean, what can we do to make it safer if we can't make it using the sprinkler system?
Well, that's why we're stepping ahead with our program, the heats and the smokes.
Right.
All right. So I mean, we're
moving forward with all that. So I think for the next, if we go with this option that's in front of us, right now, and speaking with Trustee Scott, we can only go with what we've got on the table right now. Right now, we have a fire chief and an economic development person that have stood up there, and the business community that said, we all want to make it safer. And if this gentleman can put in something, you know, using the strip mall situation, if it's one or the other, and we want to fill the store, but the only way to fill the store is to do this, but if it's safer, why not do it? So I think we go with what's in front of us. Are there going to be changes over the next couple of years? Are we going to have questions over it? Sure we are.
So, Mark, are you saying in the case of a strip mall, and in the scenario where they might want to take out a wall to make it bigger, and that would trigger, as presented, the sprinklers, are you saying in that scenario, okay, guess what? Take those 2 walls, make them firewalls, and you don't have to put sprinklers in, because right now they're not firewalls on each side. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, if we can't do the sprinkler,
can you put in a firewall?
Do something to make it safer. Now, in 3 years, they're going to need it. I understand in 3 years.
Yes, you can put a firewall in an existing building.
So I understand in 3 years, you're going to, you know, and that tenant needs to know that.
That's pretty expensive to do, though, Trustee.
Yeah.
Is it?
Because
it's pretty pricey.
Probably a masonry wall all the way up through the roof and then go several feet beyond the top of the roof.
Oh, you have to do that.
Make it an acceptable firewall.
And you can increase the fire separation between the tenants. I mean, if you want to do that, you can do that with simple drywall and metal stuff.
Yeah, you can make it a fire-resistive wall, but you can't make it a building separation firewall as defined in the International Fire Code. And that's, we talked about that definition early on in our studies there. That's why you see in some of the downtown Chicago, maybe some of the old neighborhood Chicago row houses, where you have always wondered, why does that roof come up in between the buildings that's 4 or 5 feet tall that separates the 2 units? That's why. The fire can't leap over that then. Well, it can, but it makes it much more difficult to do. It becomes a true fire separation wall.
I mean, Mark, what you're referring to is what they call area separation walls.
Okay.
You can increase your time of fire resistance the way those walls are structured. Basic structure in most strip malls, you have a single layer of 5/8 on one side, usually with a 6-inch metal stud, preferably 20 gauge, and 5/8 on the opposite side of the wall. Now, that gives you a basic 2-hour fire rating is what that gives you. Now, if you want to make your codes more stringent and make it more of a more efficient area separation wall, you then require double layer both sides filled with a Roxel, which is a fire retardant material, which can increase that wall from 2 hours to possibly 4 hours. There's any number of different construction techniques you can do, but it doesn't stop the over-the-roof situation. All it does is increase that time between spaces.
Yeah,
That's
see,
all it does.
where I was coming from with that is, you know, how we have in there if it doesn't breach a firewall. You know, construction doesn't breach a firewall. I was thinking, well, if you added a firewall, yeah, all of that stuff, I think we've.
And
my point is, we want to fill the stores and we want it safer. I wouldn't deter somebody from coming in if we have another way to make it safer instead of doing the sprinkler system. I wouldn't want to deter somebody from buying property. Yet we know in 3 years, it's it. I mean, we know that's
it.
Then how about
So-
if we try to make a concession, I don't know, money-wise, if it would be any help, but anybody who didn't want to put the sprinklers in this 3-year period in that situation would have to immediately go to the smoke heat. So it's at least connected immediately to the fire station or to the 911, whoever's
Wait, say that again?
If they don't want to put in the sprinklers, and it's in this situation, in his situation, he'd have to, maybe he could immediately, instead of waiting 3 years, go immediately to the smoke heat.
Maybe that's the answer for a strip mall.
And that way,
During this
at least
period.
we know that it's going to be directed someplace during the middle of the night when nobody's in that strip mall. And that could be a
And that's less
concession.
expensive.
Maybe that's how it's
That's less
differentiated.
expensive.
Well, and
Strip malls already have.
They already have smoke heat?
Then?
to go
All
back-
of them?
It was a good idea, though.
I'm picturing a few that I'd be
They thought of
surprised
it
if
first,
they
I
have
guess.
them.
Your Honor, maybe to go back to what Trustee Emery said earlier, if there is concern about the strip malls here, again, I think staff is very strongly supportive of requiring the strip malls to sprinkle the buildings. But if it is the desire of the board to not require that for limited remodeling, then as Mr. Caliphate suggested, you could adjust the numbers, the 20%, the 600 square feet. That would be the way I would think you would want to deal with that.
You know, I'll say it again. The problem I have with the strip mall is, I promise you, the owners of these malls, they're not going to pony up and pay for the sprinklers. They're going to pass it on to whoever's renting.
Anybody will.
And
Anybody will. Doesn't
anybody will. I don't care how we write the ordinance. At the end of the day, we can say the owner's responsible, but at the end of the day, the person renting's going to have to pay it.
As to, sorry.
I mean, and that, you know, that's a lot to ask of these businesses that are in strip malls now, hanging on by a thread.
As to Fred's question, at one point it seemed like there was a near consensus to look at what was drafted here in the memo with your agenda, which was recommended by the business owners, perhaps with the exception that Trustee Emery raised with the 20%, 600 square feet. Fred Kimball suggests maybe the board can look at that requirement, and that would be then an acceptable compromise.
I mean, whatever the board's pleasure is with regard to those numbers, we'll, of course, enforce.
This isn't going to be popular at all, but could we covered, I mean, I'm encouraged. I think we covered a lot of ground. We have a consensus on a lot of things. As far as dealing with our people outside of the business district and our strip malls, I'd like to move this to one more meeting so that I can take a look at the other kinds of properties and be as comprehensive as possible.
I have absolutely no problem with that. I mean, as much as we'd like to expedite it and get it on the road, but in the meantime, we have sales hanging in limbo, and we have people that are, you know, wanting to lease hanging in limbo, and they're reluctant to make that purchase until they know definitively what we're doing. So in some ways, I'd like to really speed it up.
Can we vote Monday on as applied to the downtown business district and table till one more meeting?
Hold back the 20% section?
Well,
the outside of, yeah, the 20% section or outside of the business downtown
yeah,
business
which is basically anything over 2,500.
Yeah.
The whole section H then?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do that. Go back to the drawing board.
You were saying, I'm sorry, say that again. Can you vote on everything except for section H?
Yeah. I take across the room's suggestion that that's what I want, because right now I'm kind of...
Well,
How are you?
Well, that's just, I'm trying, there may be something else hanging in there that, we've covered a lot of ground, and I don't want to do it on Band-Aids. I want it to make sure that we have dotted all our I's and crossed all our T's. And it's, this whole issue, it's not an easy one, and I know people are anxious to get it done. We are too, but I don't want it to be screwed up.
I agree.
I'm the first one that will accomplish that.
And really, H is what is the showstopper here. Those, the properties over 2,500. So I think if we vote on everything but H and go back to the drawing board on H, I think that could work.
That doesn't help the gentleman in the strip center who's trying to get a tenant in. You're not obligated to help that gentleman or anyone else, particularly with your time situation, but I'm just wondering, do you table everything then?
Well, here's the other suggestion. We've done this with other things, Mr. Mayor, where there's one little part hanging out there, and we have a short discussion on Monday before we vote.
Yeah, that's a thought too.
Is that a hanging Chad?
Yes. Something like this.
Well, Monday, we can always go back and discuss, and then if we still want to pull it out, I guess we can make a motion to pull that section out. I want to ask then, what would happen with the 2,500 if Trustee Fleming mentioned 5,000? That would alleviate this problem then, would it?
I don't know that it would completely alleviate it, trustee, but it would change the dynamic a little bit. Certainly, if the board wanted to make the 2,500 5,000, that is your, within the scope of your authority, certainly.
It would change the dynamics of the particular area that we're talking about, that we seem concerned with. I'm sorry, I find a distinct difference between an older business district and strip malls, and the way you have to handle said areas. Now, in some cases, some strip malls have been vacant for a long time, and some of those things could have been taken care of. That being said, I just think the waters are just getting muddier and muddier as we go here. And it's just, I think one thing's going to lead to another and another and another and another. And you talk about Band-Aids. I mean, honestly, I seriously see the way it is right now going back. I can see a multitude of Band-Aids being put all over this thing, and adjustments and changes, and I guess what's so difficult about this is, and what kind of bothers me a little bit about the whole thing, and I'm just going to say it, we try to help everybody, okay? And I understand that, and I appreciate that. But I think sometimes we need to look at the entire picture of the village as a whole. I understand that certain areas have problems or whatever, but the more dividing up and chopping you do, the more convoluted your codes and different items and sections become in your code book and come stacked. Well, no, you're in this section, so you have to follow these, but if you're over here, you have to do this. And I imagine it would be very unpopular for me to say at this point in time, 2,500 square feet is 2,500 square feet, that's what it is. I mean, I'm very frustrated with the whole scenario right now. It's like trying to be best friends with everybody. And I'm sorry, but it can't always be that way. Sometimes you make decisions and you have to stand by them by the way you feel it needs to be done for now as well as going into the future, and have a fair, level playing ground that you're working with. I mean, as it stands right now, I don't even know. I don't know how we can vote on part of this on Monday and leave part of it out.
The more I look at H, the more of a comfort level I have with as it was presented tonight, and largely because of what Trustee Emery pointed out, and that is 20% of 600 feet. You're talking a relatively small business that can do this. It's not a showstopper. It's not going to be, you know, if you've got a 3,500 square foot building, you could, I mean, 600 feet, I think that answers it. I think that's a good thing, that it limits the size of the building. I think it's a good thing. I don't see that as a problem.
We've got a full agenda ahead of us, ladies and gentlemen. We can talk on this subject until midnight tonight, and we still wouldn't have all the answers. We have to move ahead. We can't keep these other people that want to present here all night while we
I think we should vote on it as I mean, I'm fine.
I'm not.
And I think, Lisa, you know, you can't please every single business. And with all due respect to our strip malls, it's a different bird. It's different. I don't know. I'm okay with this.
Put it on for Monday night.
I think we should put it on, and
we'll sleep
you know,
over on the weekend, and come Monday, we'll start arm wrestling again.
But I'd like it componented out, though, just
Okay.
like Pat does with vehicle replacements. I'd like this one components out. There's 3 components.
You want all 3 separate?
Well, I guess then we need to throw the component in there that I would ask a motion to be put in place to take, you know, the 5,000 square feet. I mean, we'll do it Monday. But as far as the 5,000 square feet goes, I'll put that into play on Monday if we get to that point.
Okay, I think what we're saying then is we're just going to postpone the whole thing.
Well, we don't know that yet.
Put it on for Monday, we'll see what
Put
happens.
it on for Monday, and let's see how it rolls out.
I guess that'd be fine.
Yep.
Are you happy with the 24 months or the 36 months?
We'll see on Monday.
Right.
Yeah, we'll see on Monday, won't we?
Okay.
Okay.
Works for me.
We have a volunteer group here that wants to give a brief report on a climate action plan. I would like to have them go next because I think we're going to have a long discussion on Fuller's Car Wash.
Yeah, let's put that.
It's different. And that's what I tried to say.
George Hamper.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate you moving us up on the agenda. We do have a presentation for you, but I'm going to try and modify it based on the late starting time of this evening. So this will just take a minute. I'm sure at this late point in the evening you're thinking, oh my gosh, another controversial issue. Can we really take that? But I think you'll find that if you've read the climate action plan that I believe you all seen, it's really not that controversial.
No, not at all.
Good. Okay. So,
Thank you.
so let me give you a kind of an overview of how we got here. In 2007, well, actually earlier than that, the U.S. Conference of Mayors started this Mayors Climate Protection Agreement program, and in 2005, 141 mayors had signed up for it. But in 2010, we've got over 1,000 mayors have signed up for this. Our mayor in Westmont signed the Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement in 2007, and we committed to doing a few things here. To strive to meet or beat the Kyoto Protocol targets in their own communities, urge federal governments and state governments to do the same, and urge Congress to pass bipartisan greenhouse gas reduction legislation. So to do this, the first task there was to develop a climate action plan that includes an inventory of our greenhouse gas emissions, and our proposal has 16 community strategies and 8 municipal operations strategies to reduce the use of natural gas, vehicle fuels, and electricity. Other climate action plans are a lot more complicated because they get into indirect emissions in a lot more detail. But we couldn't hire a consultant for this project because The village doesn't have any extra money. So we did this all with our own forces, and it's a very simplified plan that I think you can accept. Lonnie Morris, the state coordinator for the Sierra Club's Cool Cities program, made a presentation to us in 2007, and it sounded good to us, and we recommended to the mayor that we sign this, and we did. And that led us off on this track that we have right now. Let me skip to this next slide here. Based on the inventory of greenhouse gas emissions, we found that in the community, greenhouse gas emissions were lower in 2005 than they were in the year 2000, and they were even lower in 2008. But in 2009, there was a jump there, and it was mainly because of vehicle fuel sales in Westmont. But we only have 10 gas stations or so in Westmont. If you had 100 gas stations or 1,000 gas stations, you wouldn't have so much fluctuation in the data. But with only a small number of gas stations like that, if one gas station has a good year, the number goes up. This is not a measurement of the number of the gas that people actually burn in their cars. It's a measure of how much gasoline is sold in Westmont. We can't measure the gasoline that's sold in cars because it's just too hard for us to do. So we think that 2009 was a little bit out of line, and we think that we can meet the goal of 2012, which is 7% below the 2000 level. In 2008, we were actually about 5.5% below the 2000 level. I don't know what happened in 2009, but it seems out of line. And by 2020, we think we can get, for the community-wide, we can get emissions down about 20% below the 2000 level. The major factors there are that cars are getting better, more efficient. The federal government has established standards for 2016 that are a lot more fuel efficient than the cars we're using right now. And by the year 2020, most of the cars that are on the road today will be retired, and the cars that will be on the road in 2020 haven't even been built yet. So we think that cars are going to be a lot more fuel efficient by the year 2020 because actually it's a federal law. Also, home energy systems, the heating and air conditioning systems are also getting more fuel efficient by law, but we also have the opportunity to select Energy Star rated equipment. You know, when people are shopping for this sort of thing, if they look for the Energy Star, they're going to save money over the long run. Let's skip over to municipal emissions for a minute here. The village has already saved more than 20% of direct emissions from their buildings, from the use of natural gas in the buildings, and also from vehicles, just by putting less miles on the vehicles and buying more fuel-efficient vehicles. So I think we've already reduced emissions by about 20% or more in the municipal operations. But we can reduce it another 20% if we convert one of the gasoline tanks to 85% ethanol. And again, in Illinois, the idea of using more corn-based and soybean-based fuels is not controversial in Illinois. Maybe it's controversial in Wyoming, but I don't think it's controversial in Illinois. So, by converting one of the gasoline tanks to 85% ethanol by the year 2012 and the other one to ethanol by the year 2020, we can get those emissions way down. We think we can get a 40% reduction in overall emissions of direct emissions here by the year 2012 and a 45% reduction in municipal emissions by the year 2020. So we do have a list of 16 strategies for the community as a whole and 8 for the village municipal operations, but that's all spelled out in the document that you've already read, and I don't think I'm going to go over them one by one unless you want to spend the next 2 hours on this. So maybe I'll just open it up at this point. Do you have any questions for us? These are, scrolling through here, these are all the highlights of the recommendations that we made. But assuming that you are able to see your way clear to approve to adopt the climate protection plan that we've proposed, the next steps would be that we would have to engage the public. The idea is not just to reduce emissions in the municipal operations, but also in the community at large. So we think that the climate action plan should be posted on the village website, and that pieces of the climate action plan should be rolled out a little bit at a time in the village newsletter. The village newsletter comes out 3 times a year, and if we could focus on maybe more fuel-efficient vehicles in one newsletter, and more what your opportunities are for upgrading your home heating and air conditioning system in another newsletter. If we roll this out to the public a little bit at a time, I think that they would be more open to it rather than, having to read the whole 39 pages of our plan. And then another thing that I wanted to highlight is that this calls for the village staff to provide an annual update on the progress that both the community at large and the municipal operations have made over the past years. So I would like to thank Robin Reed and Glenn Gabriel, who are the 2 other members of this committee who attended almost all of our meetings, and Ron Searle, Steve May, Fred Kimball, Mike Torney, Spencer Parker, all attended almost all of our meetings, and we appreciate the help and support that we got from them. And again, we appreciate Lonnie Morris and the Sierra Club telling us about this. And they've also given us some good tips, by the way. They told us about the CDAC energy audit program, and we've had the police station already audited for that, and they made recommendations that if we invest $115,000 in improvements to the building, we could save $19,000 a year. That's a pretty good investment. And I hope, and one of the things that we're trying to do to follow up to that is another thing that Lonnie told us about, which is applying to the Mayors and Managers Conference for a grant to get some of that work started. So I think this is a non-controversial issue, but go ahead and ask a question.
Work went into it.
Well, a lot of work, there's no question, a lot of work went into this. I mean, it's 35 pages here in microtype. So, if you put it in type for people like me with reading glasses, it would be a 50-page. And we certainly appreciate all the work that went into it. I read it. It's really good. You did a really good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
George is pretty humble, but he put a lot of time into a lot of the analysis. Now, the other committee members certainly contributed to that. Spencer Parker in our finance department also helped George quite a bit, but George did a lot of work on the analysis part. So we want to thank you for that. I mean, that was a lot of effort.
Thank you.
We will continue through the efforts of our manager, who's very much interested in this, as the rest of us are, to follow your suggestions and do what we can on a continual basis to help.
Great, thank you very much.
I really I think you did a wonderful job, and so much of it, applies to our community and to our residents, as well as to, our staff and our operations here. I think it's a great idea with the newsletter, now that it's going to be going out every other month, perhaps one section of your report, there's really good information in here. The yard waste, the recycling, all of that stuff. I think, if we can, the more we can communicate to our residents, the better for us in the long run. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the whole committee. We appreciate it. And when you're driving around in your cars, look for George on his bicycle and don't hit him, because he's not driving around in his car.
He's a good man.
Another item I'd like to take with the board's pleasure next would be the Amber Restaurant at 13 North Cass on a downtown development grant.
We just decided to renew the place and move on. And we
submit to put a new window on a southeast side of the building. And also we're doing remodeling to remodel the entire restaurant, which is going to be open tomorrow night. And I just see if village would grant us some help.
Okay.
And this can be really brief.
Yes, Your Honor, staff has inspected the proposed and completed improvements to the building now, which is essentially a set of windows there with transoms across the top. And the Downtown Development Grant Committee met and unanimously recommended approval of a grant in the amount that is stipulated in your packet. And I think some fantastic redecorating as well at the same time are going on.
It's done, finalized today.
Okay. Any comments from board members?
It really looks nice. It'll bring a lot of natural light into that.
The room is bigger. We already had a party. Some people walk in tonight and and everything is done. Whole bar, all walls are repainted and everything, floor are redone, and just we try.
Okay. Very nice.
We do have a fire sprinklers. We do. Help us once, really. If we didn't have them, we would have like the winter was and the pipe burst and the fire didn't start, we would have a lot bigger damage. And I really want to compliment the fire department coming immediately and resolve the fire. Like probably they say me, like closed business for a few weeks and a huge damage.
Wow.
Did you have anything else to add?
No, I believe approximately $3,800 and change, I think, for the Downtown Development Grant. We feel this is money well spent to help improve the character of our downtown businesses.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you for being in Westmont.
I'm back.
Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing your improvements.
Thank you, Bronco.
Next, if we could jump around a little bit here. Number 7, acceptance of public improvements. Or to consider a request for acceptance of public improvements for the Rose Hill Estates subdivision, Nelson Circle.
Your Honor, it's customary that following the completion of all required planned public improvements in a subdivision, that this be brought formally for the village board to ratify acceptance of those public improvements. I know the developer in this case, Mr. Veselinovich, has worked very closely for a long period of time with village planning engineer Kim Nickel, and I believe we're prepared to recommend acceptance of those public improvements at this time.
Okay.
Walter, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Thank you for everything. I think it's completed. We met all the requirements, and we're just here to request the final approval.
Okay. Any questions, board members?
Nope. Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in, Walter. Traffic restrictions for Marker School.
Mayor, this is an item that was reviewed at Public Works Committee meeting. It's very similar to the topic area. Actually, when we talked about this recently on 65th Street, we realized that we already had restrictions on 59th Street that we put into place and were used as our example, and fine-tuning that and working now, we would like to ratify it in ordinance form. First being the no left turn off of 59th Street into the school parking lot during the hours listed, which is essentially the morning peak pickup, peak drop off, and then pick up in the afternoon. That, just to, very quickly, it would be all traffic trying to enter this driveway. All car traffic, pickup drop off is done in this parking lot, and the bus only use this lane down here. So there's the problem with cars queuing up and getting into the intersection at Cass Avenue. So the idea is to make everybody approach from the east in a westbound direction and make right-hand turns into that parking lot. That restriction is in place. It's been in place for more than a year. This is just to ratify it in the ordinance form. The second item, I'm going to zoom in a little bit right in here, so you can see the pavement markings better. The whole length of 59th Street has a lane in each direction and then a kind of a painted parking shoulder over on the side here. This is a view of the east property line of the school, and this is where that bus driveway is. When the traffic is lined up and queued and waiting, the afternoons are always worse than the morning. In the afternoon, when everybody is waiting and they get there and they're waiting for school to get out to pick up their student, the line gets long, starts coming down the street, and if there are any parked vehicles anywhere on this block, the queue bends out into the through lane of the traffic, and that forces people to cross the double yellow line that actually are just trying to drive past the school property. So the second part, the second bullet in the board action is to limit parking just in the afternoon from the school property all the way down to Wilmette, so that there is very little traffic ever using it, but it just takes one vehicle to really disturb that queue that is otherwise working very well. So that is the second part, is the no parking on the north side of 59th Street, and you'll see there it's just in the PM hour.
Not a problem.
And that way, if they've got room mothers or other visitors at the school, they would just have to park in the lot instead of parking on the street down there. Closer to the school, there is this parking along the bus lane is actually behind the curb, so it is even further beyond that shoulder, so they have that available to them as well. So we believe that'll work well.
Questions?
Are you putting up the signs? Are we doing the signs?
We would be doing the signs. The signs for the turn restriction exist today. The new addition would be the no parking during that hours, and we would not install that until maybe the middle of August, just before school started.
Is the sign going to say when school's in progress or something, so they know they can do it on weekends or during the summer?
Exactly here. As indicated, it'll be 3 to 4 p.m. on school days.
Okay.
So that implies when school is in session. So if it's a school holiday, then the parking restriction would not apply.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
The next item, number 8, commercial recycling program proposal. Board to review a waste management commercial recycling program proposal. So we're not going to be voting on this on Monday. We're just
No, this is, I understand. This is going to be very brief. I just wanted to introduce the program, or the program we're contemplating in regards to the increasing the recycling in the community. As you know, we're the service provider for bulk trash recycling and yard waste. And basically the component, one integral component is the recycling aspect. And to give you the residential end of the recycling aspect, for instance, right now if you were to take your refuse tons to date up through June, it's just about 2,000 tons have been picked up in the community. You take the amount of tons in recycling, it's about 900. So it's a pretty good significant amount of recyclables being gathered. Where we lack is the commercial end of recycling, and that's been kind of a sore for many, many years. Recently, DuPage County is really putting an emphasis on that, and to that end, we've had a couple meetings with staff in regards to really taking a serious look at the commercial recycling end of it. And what we would like to propose, and that's why I'll just kind of go over what we were thinking about proposing to the village in regards to a contract, not a contract, but an additive to the contract for commercial recycling. What we would do is, in the contract, there's some vague language about bins, commercial recycling bins. Each commercial account can have so many bins, so on and so forth. It's never been really looked at carefully and taken seriously, and the majority of people don't even use it. What we would like to propose is that Waste Management would give each business a 96-gallon recycling toter cart at no charge. So, and this, I'm hearing all these costs, the small business, this is important. So this would particularly be very attractive to the small businesses that, okay, they can do some recycling now at no additional cost to the bill, and hopefully, maybe, the way it goes, they can even reduce their service, possibly if they recycle enough. One hand serves the other. So this would be the main component. Going beyond that, for larger accounts or commercial accounts of any size, then there would be an additional cost. But the basic unit would say, hey, we can go right downtown and offer everybody a 96-gallon cart for recyclables at no additional cost. And this would be a first step to expanding the commercial recycling in the community. What we thought of is basically is communication. Of course, we would have to communicate this to the businesses. I think a letter maybe co-signed by the village, DuPage County, and Waste Management in a cooperative effort to the businesses would be sent out. We would have no problem paying the postage on that to facilitate that. And some of the larger accounts would have to be called on, like the large multifamilies and larger businesses. These would have to be made by personal visits. But this, that's briefly what we're looking at. Right now, there's 650 businesses that are serviced in the village. And we've got a participation rate of about 28% in recycling. The goal, after a couple meetings we've had with staff and DuPage County, we set a goal if we could raise that, even reach up to 40% would be a good benchmark. So that would be our goal when we kick off this program, to get up to 40% participation rate. But just to give you an idea, it's kind of astounding, but the commercial tonnage so far in 2010, we've picked up like almost 6,000 tons of refuse. And correspondingly, the recycling is 129 tons. So it's major. So that's what that's the plan of attack. So it's just an introduction of the program, what we're anticipating. I have nothing printed, nothing handed out, but it's just a first stepping stone. So if you got any comments on it, but it's a way of, and I've heard this from many times to businesses, particularly the small businesses, and what I've heard just before this kind of falls in real nice with it.
So you're going to use the trucks with the toters with the arms on the side to lift them up?
Yeah, if we can. Well, alleys, yeah, sure.
In the alleys behind
it? It's a little hard in the alley. We don't have a fully automated system. That's a fully automated system. With articulated arm that comes out, we call a semi-automatic. Wheels it out, hooks it on a tipping device, and it flips, But it's partially so. So hopefully that's what we've got.
Is that something we can look forward to the residents to at some time?
Yeah, well, we've got the alley issue here. This is a real, some of the alleys are.
But we got the alley issue with the businesses.
Yeah, oh, sure, I know, yeah. But that's the problem, is the alleys are sometimes very, very difficult to operate, particularly in the winter months, things of that type. And you've got, well, that's another issue, but it's a start, and that's what we're looking at.
What do you do with the really large apartment buildings? Because, by Trustee Senek and I, we have a lot of apartment buildings, and there's dumpsters and there's stuff flying all over the place because they're not big enough and there's no recycling bins. And you said it requires a personal visit, but a 96-gallon drum will do it.
You get a commercial, then you have to step up to a commercial-size recycling container. Then there would be a cost. Anything, let me put it this way. Don't kid yourselves. There's a cost to recycle another truck, another time. What we're saying is, this is kind of aimed at the small business guy. He's going to get a 96-gallon cart to recycle and get serviced one time a week. That's it. You go beyond that, you're going to start adding costs. And that would fall into the pricing matrix that we've got established already. You have a pricing matrix for refuse and recycling containers. But at least with this, if we could pick up, and we're hoping that some of these, like you say, the mom and pop stores, this would open the doors for them quite a bit.
So like bars and restaurants, there's no incentive not to just throw away all their beer bottles because
this is commingled. You can sure throw them in the cart.
No, I mean there's no incentive if several of our bars in town, I'm sure, have more beer bottles than fit in a 96-gallon container.
They can step it up then. Then they would, for instance, okay, say a 96-gallon, I think we've established where we'd go twice per week service, $18 a month.
Okay.
So if they want it, and then it steps up from there. But it's it's just a small step and a giant gap in recycling. So.
I think the problem you brought up with the apartment buildings, the problem with that is, it'd be a great thing to see them do, but no matter how many stickers you put on a container that says recyclable goods only, I guarantee you those residents are gonna throw their regular garbage in there.
Well, I'm sure residents do it now,
that's
things
right.
go in there that
it's
shouldn't.
like, you know, that's the difficult part of that. I would love to see a way to get these complexes to recycle. I mean, that would take a lot of stuff out of the landfills as it is now. And I mean, we all know how that's going.
Well, if you can get to a point, if it's that large of a facility, if you can get to a point where you can show them that they can reduce their refuse bill, you know, and compensate it with enough recyclables.
But you're dealing with,
it's tough. Oh, no, I know. There's nobody policing that container.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way it's going to stop somebody from throwing it in the other container.
Absolutely.
But I mean, yeah, I have to say, how soon can this be put in play with these 96?
Well, we would have to sit down. We spoke about a pilot program.
The goal was to initiate it beginning September 1st, depending on how this discussion went.
Yeah.
What would have to happen, and what Mr. Carl alluded to, was there'd be a mailing that would go out. It would be a jointly sponsored mailing between Waste Management, DuPage County, and then we forgot to mention the Westmont Chamber of Commerce has also been part of our discussions. So the key is to get that together and get that mailing out as quickly as possible, but the goal would be to try to initiate it as quickly as September 1st.
Yeah, and going back to Trustee Scott's comments, and I've kind of been a proponent of this too, and I mean, you've been here a couple of times when I've said it, with these tote containers in the alleys. I understand the problems and that you deal with it, but I guess what I hearken back to is if we're able to implement this in the alleys in the downtown district, why can't we take some alleys in the rest of the village and try it and see what happens? Just to see if it'll work. Instead of just saying, well, the alley is what it is, because you've got snow stacked up in these alleys just like any other alley in this village. So, I mean, you're facing the same problem, be it in the downtown district or be it in the residential area with the alley. And I mean, granted, yeah, it might be a little bit more work, but I mean, as it is now, I think it would behoove Waste Management to come up maybe with something larger than this small 18-gallon thing or whatever. I mean, you know, to come up with a larger container that can be handled, because a lot of residents go out and buy regular cans and tag them recycle, and there's a lot of times residents have more recyclables going out than they do waste. So, I mean, you know.
The problem is the winter months. We've talked with operations quite a bit about, looked at this very seriously. And it's, you've got some of the alleys, you've got the steps, you know, you've got those steps on the sides, and it becomes a safety issue too, you know. In the winter months, it's really tough. But maybe with some cooperation about, I don't know whether.
I don't understand.
Right down the alleys?
I don't understand why in residential area they can't just wheel it out to the curb. Why does it even have to be the alley?
Well, there are some places in town where there's our great.
I would go with that. That'd be no problem.
I know, but I'm saying, why does that have to be?
There are some places where there's great separation that might be difficult for some, particularly older residents.
Some of the walk, I guess some of the homes don't have a walk that even goes to the, is that right? They don't have the walk that goes
Washington
to the front
Street,
portion?
particularly.
Yeah, some don't have.
That. South Washington, you'll see that.
I guess that's a topic for another night.
Yeah, but we've looked at it many times.
3 minutes are up. Yeah.
It's a tough thing, moving it from the back to the front.
It is something we've talked about in the past. I know Waste Management has offered the cart system in the past. I think they'd love to implement it. But that was one issue. The other issue was storage of the carts in for some of the homes in the center part of town where they have the space to be able to put those carts in their garages or what have you.
I don't see that as our problem.
This was kind of tuned towards a small business guy. Give him a little breathing room.
But you were here, so we had to ask the question.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's fine.
I think we need that.
About the joint letter, that is only going out to existing customers of Waste Management, is that correct?
in the community.
The point is, you're not the exclusive commercial recycling entity. There are 3 other.
These are small businesses, yeah.
So I guess the question is it going to your existing?
Is it going to your existing customers, or are you sending it to every business within the village as a way to try and attract?
Customers. We have our existing customers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason is I was cautious about the village signing on to a letter that was going to another business under contract with someone else.
Oh, no, yeah, right.
It
No,
sounds like that
this
is
would
not
be
happening.
our business profile.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So it would be safe to send it to those that are not under contract with anyone or existing?
Right.
No, because then we'd still be endorsing an advertisement. It can only go to existing.
See, we do have all the refuse.
So we do
but
existing
all
and then just advertise the program? No, okay.
You're referring to, we have the refuse customers, but some of them may be taking recycling service from another hauler.
Right. I don't want the village to get into a
I know.
contract lawsuit.
No. So.
Okay, are we
Okay.
the direction to move ahead with this? Hopefully it'll go into effect September 1st.
And for the agenda on Monday, we can either remove this entirely, or you can, I guess, approve a motion endorsing this program, however you'd prefer.
Or authorize staff to work with Waste Management on the.
Authorize staff to.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming in, sir. Comcast franchise agreement.
We have representatives here from Comcast tonight. We've been working, I want to say, probably close to 2 years on our renewal of the franchise agreement. Part of the reason that it has been delayed is there's been conversations at kind of a regional level of trying to develop some sort of a model franchise agreement. We slowed down our discussions to try to look at how things were going to develop in those discussions, and we think we're at a point where have a good sense of what that model is going to look at, and we had already progressed pretty far in our discussions on our own individual franchise agreements. So we're comfortable at this point presenting this to the board. We think we've worked out all the issues, and I'll let Tony Signorelli is a representative from Comcast. And Tony, if you maybe want to hit some of the highlights of the agreement.
Sure. Again, I want to thank the mayor and the village board for allowing Comcast to be here. As Ron said, and I want to thank Ron and John in particular. We've worked, this has been a labor of love. We've spent a lot of time working on this. I think it's actually been over 2 years, and for numerous reasons it's taken a while. But we do have a good agreement here. I think John did a good job putting together some of the highlights in your request for board action. Just to touch on a few of those. First of all, this is a non-exclusive franchise agreement for 10 years with the opportunity for an extension of 5 years with village approval. We are casting the widest net possible for gross revenues, and the village is allowed the 5% franchise fee, 5% of annual gross revenues as a franchise fee, which is basically consistent of what we have been paying, which you have been receiving, and consistent with what AT&T provides the village as well. We will continue to provide service for the schools and the government facilities. Currently, you receive 2 PEG channels, community access channels. We'll continue to provide those. There's also language in this agreement for the opportunity for a 3rd channel. And on top of that, there's also language in here where the village retains the right to inspect and audit our records. And there's also an address exchange language too. So we make sure that we are, both parties have the correct information on all the addresses within the village. So I think we've ironed those issues out.
Maybe you could talk about the PEG access fee also.
PEG Capital? Yes, there's we've worked it where in working with Glenn and John, we have put together the ability to upgrade the current existing equipment that you have here, PEG Capital, and that would be a pass-through up to 35 cents per subscriber. So, and that's for the duration of the entire term. So those costs for PEG Capital upgrades would be spread across the subscribers throughout the village.
And we have, it's up to 35 cents, so the village could ask this pass-through to be a lesser amount, or after a certain number of years can terminate it, then can reinstitute it, as long as it's not in a greater amount than was previously set by the village. We do have current equipment replacement needs that are quite costly, so I think the plan would be to implement this this fee and see how it goes.
How is the cap of 35 cents determined? What is that based on? Is that some sort of statute or something? Or?
Well, it was a number first suggested by Comcast. It's a number they've used in many other communities. And then what we did was Glenn came up with an estimate of what the capital cost would be for equipment replacement, times the number of residents, how many years would it take to accumulate funds to pay for the capital improvements. And then, of course, the equipment's going to continue to age once it's purchased, so that by the time this agreement's done, it will be nearly time to think about replacing some or all of it again. So we tried to come up with a number that was as low as possible for the residents, since it's a pass-through. But we do have immediate capital replacement needs.
Great.
I could tell you that it was just speaking with Glenn, and he's finalizing the assessment. He showed me some quotes that should be completed. And like John was saying, it's up to 35 cents. We've had other municipalities that chose not to go that high, 20 cents, 30 cents, and so forth.
But it's safe to say that going forward, no franchises are going to exceed that.
Correct. And to touch on further, 35 cents is basically trial and error. It's been noted in different municipalities where we had franchise agreements where 35 cents seems to be that level where it's not too much for the customers, and it also is able to handle the needs assessments for PEG Capital for the different municipalities.
Good.
I have a question about the undergrounding. It says in here that if you decide, if the village or all users of the public way decide to do undergrounding, it says that Comcast's relocation costs shall be included in the computation of the project funding by the municipality or private parties, that Comcast as grantee is entitled to the reimbursement of those costs from public or private funds raised for the project. In ComEd, if we decided to underground, we do an agreement with ComEd at the time before we start undergrounding, whereby the cost is allocated to the users who benefit from that, so that the municipality doesn't have to pay for it from its capital projects funds, general reserves, whatever. And it's passed along over a period of time to the users on their utility bills. Why is it that this contract has it that you're entitled to reimbursement from public or private funds, and it's not the same type of pass-through, so that the village would not have to come up with the money to pay for undergrounding?
Yes, trustee, several answers to that. My name is Dan Maloney. I'm Director of Government Affairs. The short and simple answer on that one is us compared to ComEd, we don't have Rider 28 under the Illinois Commerce Commission to do that very thing. But the other thing, with the most important thing, I think, with the way this is written and is intended, is that we only obtain reimbursement if in a project like that, the village is reimbursing other users of the right-of-way. So if you're not, in your scenario, you're not reimbursing ComEd, they've got the ability to do that rider, we wouldn't qualify for reimbursement. We're just seeking here is equal treatment, that if you compensate one right-of-way occupant for this work, that we also be compensated.
Okay, that explains it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything further? After 2 years of work?
More than that?
More than
I think it's more like 4.
Is it?
We have
Before
a
my
lady
time.
from the president who would like to make some comments regarding franchise.
Thank you. I appreciate the time to talk to you tonight. My name is Carol Soul, and I live in the Orchard Gate subdivision, and I wanted to address the matter of the Comcast franchise agreement. In March, my area went to digital cable. I spent more than 7 hours on the phone with Comcast to accomplish a simple transition. Took more than 20 phone calls to get one television set working. No two people I talked with on the phone or in my home gave me the same answers. And very, very rarely did I ever speak to the same person more than once. A good example of that is I still don't know if I can work a VCR with the systems I have in place. One guy told me, oh, absolutely not. And another one said, oh yeah, no problem. But no problem doesn't seem to work. The one he set up doesn't seem to work. On my first bill after the transition to digital cable, there were 16 adjustments. Most of them vague and mysterious as to what they were for. Some of them canceling each other, some of them raising the bill, some of them lowering the bill. I now have my August bill in hand. It still has adjustments on it. I still don't know what these new services are going to cost me. From March to August, I still don't know. Comcast is running television ads that say you can reach them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Well, that's if you want new services or if you want to order services. It's not if you want to talk about your bill. In that case, they have restricted hours. They're also advertising that you can add a DVR for $9.99 a month, which completely ignores the fact that there's also an equipment charge for that. Specifically to the agreement, in section 4.1, just FYI, there's no reference there to if it specifically cited laws and regulations change or are amended, that the change passes through to this agreement. That language is in a couple other sections. And this does appear to be the only section that actually even references customer satisfaction or customer service. You'll notice the Comcast representatives here tonight didn't mention customer satisfaction or customer service. Their performance is so incredibly poor. And I speak for myself, I tell you my story, but I have many friends who shared similar stories with me. So the best thing I can say about this franchise agreement is I'm very pleased that it is not an exclusive agreement. And I really encourage you to seek an additional provider. Thank you.
Just to address one point, this agreement does briefly reference the cable and video consumer protection law, which is the section you referenced. The prior franchise agreement spelled out the customer protection provisions in quite some detail, over a page and a half, 2 pages. Very specifics, how quickly they had to respond to a call, where their offices had to be located, et cetera. That is now all codified in this state statute. So we are simply referring to a state statute that is many, many pages long, gives customers certain rights and protections, and I guess it's incumbent upon the customers to know what their rights are. Maybe the village can publish those rights for the benefit of customers in some form or fashion on the village's website, et cetera, so you know who to contact, what the response time should be, et cetera.
I would hazard a guess that residents don't even recognize what a franchising authority is, what it means, and what it means to them.
Our role has changed significantly in the last 20 years because of the deregulation of these video services. The reason we had that kind of detail in prior franchises is because we had greater authority in terms of enforcing that. The idea is to try to create a more competitive environment. That's why it's a non-exclusive franchise agreement. But that stuff, as John had mentioned, has now been codified in state and federal law.
Which is 2 or 3 layers removed from this agreement. So again, I think the concept of competition would be an excellent one to apply in the village.
We would be happy to try to work with you and with Comcast. We do get contacts from residents periodically about service issues, and frankly, my experience with that situation is they've been pretty responsive in trying to get them addressed. So I'd be happy to try to resolve any issues you have outstanding with them.
Although I think I'm the poster child on how long it took them to bury my line, which was 12 years.
Yes, that is one of the things, is that they will not bury your, the person who puts the line in will not bury your line. Somebody else has to do that. And you have to keep calling them until they bury the line. Now, a friend of mine did just get their line buried. It's interestingly, 2 days later, their service went off. So
it's not encased in the proper underground holdings. They just take the cable and put it under the ground, which basically you're just, I mean, it's not encased in anything.
no, it's not. And it's usually buried only inches deep and rises to the surface again.
Yep.
So there are problems with their customer service. There's problems with their performance. And I'm not suggesting that you don't authorize this agreement, only that you need to be aware that their service could be performed much better than what it is right now. And competition would be a wonderful thing to have here in Westmont. I know they do in Naperville. It seems to be working for them. Thank you.
There is another provider in Westmont. They just don't, I don't know if they cover.
AT&T provides digital.
Yeah.
They don't cover all areas yet. AT&T Uverse does not.
Well, and there's satellite dishes and all kinds of things, so there's a lot of options
Yeah, but you
open
can't
to all
get
of
the
our
village board
residents.
meetings on satellite.
Right, maybe
But
they
you
don't
put them
want
on
to.
AT&T.
I actually watched the board meetings on Comcast. So-
Just one other note.
I'm gonna switch.
Several years ago, the village enacted a construction standards in the right-of-way ordinance for all utilities, including Comcast. So when they are doing work not on your private property, but within the right-of-way, they do have to meet those standards. That also has simplified this ordinance a little bit because we have an exhaustive ordinance covering that subject.
Thank you.
What does that mean in terms of burying the cable?
I'll let them, I prefer to have Comcast representatives address that issue.
Thank you, John. You know, and first, let me apologize to you, ma'am, and before you leave tonight. I mean, I do appreciate your taking the time to be here. I mean, it's 3 hours after the meeting started, and you're still here, and you should not have to do that. So we will get your information. We will take care of those things. You know, customer service is ultimately what matters, because you can buy, as we said, you know, there's HBO, there's satellite, 2 satellite companies. You can buy HBO or ESPN or, you know, whatever you might want from each of us. So customer service is going to be the differentiating factor. There's an article, I believe, in today's Wall Street Journal that talked about customer satisfaction across the video industry. And while our satisfaction scores have improved 13% in the last couple of years, we're still nowhere near where we need to be. And it's a lot of work to do. So it is things like addressing issues of cable burials and service calls. I do know the reason why a cable will get placed, an installation will get placed across a customer's yard, and then the person who places it won't bury it, is because we need to call into Julie to have locates done to make sure that when we bury it, we don't cut something. And that takes, help me out, 72 hours? It's a couple of days.
24.
You know, so that's part of it. I mean, could we be better at those things? Absolutely. You know, and we keep trying. You know, as Ron said too, if and when there are issues, you know, you should have no hesitancy to call myself, call Tony. Ron's got our numbers, knows where to find us. If you need us to come out here to talk to you at any time about things that are going on, we'll do that too. We're not gonna run and hide. You know, and all I can promise you is we are going to continue to work as hard as we can to provide the best of everything.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I don't want to seem like an apologist for Comcast, but over the 27 years I've been here, we've had 4 or 5 different companies hold our cable franchise. And this burial issue that Trustee Scott described has been one that's been fairly consistent with all those different providers. I don't know if it's an industry-wide issue, but it is something we seem to have to work on frequently with.
Sometimes hard to find good help.
But it should be your responsibility to contact Julie within whatever the time period is, that come back again after Julie's marked it and put the cable underground.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, now if we can jump back.
Yeah.
To the issue that we are all looking forward to. Fuller's Car Wash, 417 West Ogden. Or to consider the following 3 sign variance requests from Fuller's Car Wash. A, an ordinance granting a zoning code variance to increase the number of allowable signs from 3 to 6. B, an ordinance granting a zoning code variance to increase the maximum gross square footage of ground signage to approximately 98.8 square feet. And C, an ordinance granting a zoning code variance to increase the maximum gross square footage of all signage to approximately 281.50 square feet. Yes, please.
Thanks again for allowing us your time tonight. 2 weeks ago, I was here to present our variation request for Fuller signage, and I listened to all your concerns that night and took it back to the Fullers, and we looked at it in length. We've made some changes, we've made some design changes, eliminated some signage, and I'd like to go through that with you. But first, there was a lot of concern I heard that night about what type of business Fuller's Car Wash is transitioning into, and I did a poor job of trying to answer those questions. So Mr. Matt Fuller is here tonight, and I'd like him to try to answer those questions for you.
I'm Matt Fuller with Fuller's Car Washes. I'll step over here so you can hear me. I think there was a little misunderstanding on what type of car wash this was going to go to or what it was going to be. We are still going to offer full service car washing. It's not changing. However, we are offering a exterior wash also to try to grab a larger market share. Our market share is dwindling because of the bad economy. People cannot afford a $15 car wash anymore. They can maybe afford it once a month, every 2 months, but they can't afford it every week. So this is our 6th car wash out of our 13 car washes that we've changed so far. We've been in testing for 3 years with about 3 of them. It's gone over very well. People love it. It's a very fast in and out. If you don't have time, you get to sit in your car, go through, the dryers dry it off, you can leave. If you want to vacuum it yourself, because you can't afford to have us vacuum it, which a lot of people can't these days, we have 10 free vacuum stalls where you can pull into and vacuum your car yourself. So this is just a sign of the times with the bad economy, and we've been forced to go this direction. We're spending $875,000 here. We didn't want to. We're forced to with the bad economy. It's going to be a nice car wash. Your car is going to come out 100% clean and almost 100% dry without any manpower touching that car. And the full service people that want to pay the $15 or $20 or $25, whatever wash they buy, they're still going to get the service. However, the vacuuming is not going to be done before the wash. It's all going to be done after the wash. Therefore, all the customers get to go in at the same pace. If they want the full service, they can spend the time after the wash, and our guys will vacuum the car after the wash. So it's still high-end car washing, but it's a steakhouse that's offering a cheeseburger. That's what we're doing.
So you're going to transition all of your locations
Yes.
to this?
All of our locations have already put in a $4.95 car wash, including our Hinsdale location, our Countryside location. All of our locations have a $4.95 exterior car wash. We implemented it 2 years ago.
So they're all going to the $3?
Yes, Hinsdale will not have the room to do this because you need parking lot space. Yes, for vacuums and stuff like that. Countryside will be going to it within 3 years. Oak Lawn, our Oak Lawn Wash is next. We're doing that in the fall. We have a car wash in Orland Park. They're starting that August 1st. So they're all going to this direction. Our market share was dwindling. People can't afford it no more.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
We all appreciate that, and we all are glad that we have somewhere we can go and wash our car that won't cost $15. There was, I'm sure it got back to you, a lot of talk about the appearance of the signs last time. They were equated to Vegas, strip malls, and I thought they kind of looked like the Papa John's motif and all that. And having thought about it in the last 2 weeks, it's not the idea of your change of business, and I speak for myself. The other board members obviously have their own opinion. It's not the change of the business. It's not the price of the car wash. It's the demographics that surround it. I don't like the red, white, and blue look. The amount of money that has gone into the high-end auto dealers is staggering. And the amount of money that they are still pouring into it is staggering. And I mean, this is no offense to you, but if a person goes into the Westmont Lamborghini dealer and buys a car, you have to sell approximately 100,000 car washes to equal what that one person does. We like those customers, obviously. We like our dealers because of what they do for the town and the tax revenue it brings in. That said, I would rather see your signs done, and no offense to you, sir, classier. If they were black and gold and written in script, it would make a psychological difference than a big red 3 and in red, white, and blue. Because when we drive down Ogden Avenue, we see stainless steel and we see glass and, brushed nickel, and we see lovely things. And I think that it's more appropriate, because you're right in the middle of all of it, to look like what you're surrounded by.
I can respect that. The only thing is our logo, the Fuller's logo, is red. It's a registered trademark. It's going in all our locations. It's a white background with a red Fuller's and an oval. I mean, that is our trademark. That would hurt us to change that color.
I'm happy to see that you decided to add your trademark.
Right, we revised
Because the absence of it
right, and I respected what you guys said, and I thought about what you guys said, and I said, you know what, they got a good point. And I might be doing it at the other ones we do. I'm probably going to go to this point. So you learn each step, you learn each one you do. You learn a little bit more.
We missed your name. I mean, that was so, that has something to it.
Thank you.
And when we were looking at this huge 3,
who are these people?
Yeah, it's like everybody will think that, that you're not the owner anymore.
Right.
And that's why,
And I respect that, and I appreciate the compliment. That's a compliment to me and to my family, and I appreciate that. That's very nice. And we're going to put the Fullers above it, and we are actually going to leave the Fullers on the north building. We're leaving the Fullers on that. We're not taking that off and putting that to a 3. So that's going to stay the same.
This is north elevation, so it will.
We are repainting this building. It's not going to have this look anymore. It's going to have a sandstone look with a lighter color mansard going around. It's not going to have that dark brown. The building needs to be updated, so that's going with the process. It's getting all restuccoed and repainted during the construction period. So it's going to have a nice, classy look. It's going to have a sandstone bottom and then a kind of like a taupe-colored canopy around the top.
One of the things that Trustee Emery is saying is about the the dealerships we have to the east of there and the quality that they are. One of the issues that the Fullers has got is I don't think they have that market share of that business anymore because almost all the dealers are offering car washes themselves.
Yes, they are. A majority of them are.
And so for that, where we would hope to get that business going down to the Fuller's end of it and doing it, since they're already offering their own car washes, it kind of takes that segment of it away to where they're going to another segment instead to try to, if I'm...
You're 100% right. A lot of, I would say 90% of those dealers there have free car washes for their customers for the lifetime of the car.
I understand that, but I'm just talking about blending to have high-end auto row that we have been lucky enough to get. I would like to keep the same look going down the street.
Kind of the character of the neighborhood, so to speak.
Correct. I'm not saying you're going to get some, trying to get that market share. We know you pay that much for a car, they're going to do a lot more than wash it for you, too. But I'm just saying the whole, as Trustee Seneca said, the character.
What's your suggestion then on the change? Besides just putting it in gold or black or something like that, or brushed steel?
I don't like to see a big red and green $3. I don't like it.
There's not going to be no green. There's no green on our
No,
side.
we've reduced the size of the 3 substantially from before.
The dollar sign's green.
Well,
on
the painting, or on the print.
Yeah, I.
On which one?
Just referring to this.
Oh, well, we can get rid of that green if you'd like. That's no problem. I can change that to red. No problem.
I mean, I agree with Trustee Emery in that it's not, to me, it's not the most attractive sign I've ever seen, with all due respect. I do think it kind of reduces the image of the Fuller's name, but I understand where you're going with that and why you're doing it. But it's not our job to tell you what your sign's supposed to look like.
I can't advertise the $3. My business won't take off.
Our job is to either approve or deny the variance you're requesting, and I appreciate that you've brought the number of signs down. You've brought it down yet again, so you're far more reasonable than you started out with 2 months ago or whenever that was, a month ago maybe. But
I think I'm more worried about not the look of the sign so much, but how many people it will attract.
right,
I want it to attract as many as possible,
be nice to see a line.
so they're busier than they were.
That's
And in this,
exactly.
Be nice to
and
see a
and the way
line.
things are today, maybe in the future, if they've got so many cars coming in, they can decide to upgrade it again. But right now, we need as many cars coming in there as possible.
I'm hoping that I can put $10 on there.
Will you sprinkle it? No, just kidding.
Then I'll put gold $10 up there because, but right now and we've tried it at other car washes. We started at $5. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Do you find that, like what you've got up now with the black background, your red Fullers and the white letters and a red 3 would not work?
I kind of like the look of the
That's not going to be a black background anymore.
And this sign we have right up there now is one I was just put up, is going to be eliminated.
Yeah, this
That's
sign's
the west
coming down,
elevation
yeah.
sign, which is coming down.
I like the fact that he's changing the color of the building, too,
Yeah, it's going to look a lot better.
instead of just a white, stark type of a building.
I'm okay with it.
I don't.
I think one of the things that we talked about the last time, if the building was changed in a different direction, he'd be allowed to have a certain percentage, and we did it with another, there was unique circumstances, but we've done that, where he said if the building is facing a different way, and we've approved it, so I'm okay with it. I think we're still over slightly if you change the building, I guess the wider part on Ogden, you'd still be over, I think, by 15%, but close enough. You've reduced it. If we can get the cars in, there's a line, everybody benefits.
So are we still going from 3 to 6 signs?
No.
No, technically what it is, right now, Fuller's has on-site permitted 3 displays. He has 1 freestanding sign, he has 2 on the building.
Are they going to 4?
One's going to be removed, so that he's left with 2. Want to put 1 on each of the canopies, that's 3 and 4. So it's really 4 signs on site, but I think staff counted the free vacuum display on the monument sign as being an additional sign. But if we're also saying that it's over square footage, it can't be both. It's either one sign that's over square footage.
No, because what we've got in front of us says from 3 to 6.
Well, and then this email from Shannon came in, so there was a last minute proposal. I don't know if the free vacuum sign was going to,
She counted that as, in other words, you had, right now, you counted the free vacuum on the freestanding sign. So you have a freestanding sign right now, that's one. And then the free vacuum on there was 2. And then we had 2 wall signs was 4. And then originally we were asking for 3 on the canopy, that was 7. We only have 1 freestanding sign, we will have 1 on the building, and we'll have, we're requesting 1 on each canopy. It's 4.
there was discussion about removing the free vacuum sign in lieu of, they have their electronic message board,
Right.
et cetera.
That's what we talked about.
Yeah, and I think that was something that also came out of Planning and Zoning Commission.
No, could I say something? They actually said you have to have that on there.
Okay, I know it was
Yes,
discussed.
they were, you know, like some of the discussions here tonight, how they see how important it is.
Wait, planning and zoning told you had to have that?
At least 1 or 2
see that in the
commented that it was something that you have to have on there.
That's our street sign right now, and we're just proposing to put that free vacuum sign on our street sign.
Do you have a copy of the email that we got, that we received from Shannon?
Probably not. They weren't copied on.
Because, no, they weren't, that's what I'm asking, because based on that, that's what I was going off of, is the email figuring, and according to this, you have, there's the 2 existing, a main ground sign and a north wall sign, and then 3 proposed, free vacuum, canopy sign 1 and a canopy sign 3.
The free vacuum is on the freestanding sign.
It's already, the freestanding sign's already there.
If you're calling the freestanding sign one sign and then the addition to it.
Well, I'm not worried about.
No, for the square footage.
I'm just looking at the square footage.
Oh,
And with that, with what she gave us, it says a percent increase over the code allows is approximately 65%. What I was saying is if the building was turned, that would only be about 15% over what, you know, based on what we were talking about last time. So that's why I said I'm okay with, based on this email. But I don't know if you have the email, and we all need to be on the same page.
Yeah.
Our total square footage, I think you're referring to the graph in the center?
Yeah.
Okay, the main ground sign 84, as it is today, and the free vacuums proposed on that is 14. And then you have the north wall sign and the 2 canopy signs. It's okay, it's 5 signs. I'm just saying, really, it's 1 freestanding sign we're making bigger.
I'm really confused because I thought the last meeting you said you weren't going to have the free vacuum sign. You had that X'd out.
It was going to be on
you're
the
not
message.
mistaken.
It was going to
because
be on the
was-
message board.
That
Yeah,
was
that's what we're,
crossed.
that is going on the message board. We're not putting it on the canopy. The
I think
free
we had it
vacuum
on
the canopy.
we
We
had-
had it on the canopy also, in vinyl lettering, free vacuum.
Okay, I don't think we ever saw the drawing that said, I don't think that drawing got to us. It had the
But I thought
free
we
vacuum on the canopy.
said, put it on the message board and take the sign off the monument sign, the yellow and black free vacuums, and run it on the electronic board. That's what I thought.
Yeah, that's what I thought we said. As we see it now, it wouldn't say free vacuums. It would show instead above on the electronic board. That's what I thought you had said last time.
I think it was discussed, most of the discussion seemed like it was more about the look more than anything. That sign's only 14 square feet. It's not a real large display.
I thought our packet even showed it taken out.
My corrected copy that I had, that I printed off that afternoon, because I get all my stuff online now, had the free vacuum sign crossed.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It was in our packet. That's exactly what I'm saying. It was in our packet that way.
Last time
it
we
was
didn't
crossed off.
like it on the monument, and it's back on today. So are we revisiting
Well, if it's a
it?
free vacuum, I'd like to pick one up for home.
You should try it. It's good.
Your house? Where's my free vacuum?
I would like to pick up my free vacuum and take it home.
I'm okay with it saying free
It's
vacuum.
fine.
Doesn't.
I'm just happy that the square footage has come down so significantly. The sign looks much nicer, even though it's not our job to tell you what your sign should look like.
We'd like
It
to
looks
make them
nicer. I
attractive,
still
too.
don't
We just
like
like to
it.
make them work.
I'll be
They have
quick
to
to
work.
say, I don't like it, but it's nicer.
Thank you.
I think taking off the free vacuum makes that sign look a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, the black and
Really
red,
does.
Yellow and black is now the We Buy Gold logo. Everybody uses the yellow with the black.
You know why the
letters.
yellow and black? Because it grabs eyeballs.
It's two most contrasting
We
colors.
understand it's high contrast, and that's, I think, what we don't like, but it's your choice.
Better, much better.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Thanks for taking the time and listening to us.
Thank you for coming in and
Thank you very much. I know it's been a long night. Thank you.
and making the changes.
Any other comments will be brought up on Monday evening for discussion? Where are we?
I was
Okay.
just asking if staff is okay with this?
Yes, Your Honor, the staff believes that this most recent proposal represents a significant change, and I guess we appreciate the effort that Fuller's made to try to meet us partway. Perhaps they didn't get all the way to where the village board would like to be, but again, we respect the fact that the economic times are very difficult.
Yeah. Okay, number 10, Public Safety Reform Advisory Referendum. Board to consider placing a public safety pension reform advisory referendum on the November 2010 general election ballot.
The history behind this is goes back to the March 1st Administration Finance Committee meeting where we talked about the idea of putting this question on as an advisory referendum, really to draw attention to the issue that the state legislature needs to do something to try to reform the public safety pension problem that we have. As the board knows from discussions revolving around the tax levy ordinance, there's a significant problem throughout the state in terms of funding public safety pensions. The General Assembly acted this past spring to enact some reform on the non-public safety pensions. And what this question is geared to is to try to raise awareness amongst the voters about this problem, and hopefully that will help urge the elected officials to do the right thing and try to enact some similar reform for public safety pensions. This is an issue that's been heavily discussed amongst municipalities throughout the Chicagoland area. There's a pretty significant effort underway to try to have this question on the ballot in many different locations, again, to try to raise that awareness. So that's what we're asking the board for, is the authority to go ahead and place this on the agenda, on the ballot for the November election.
Question?
Sounds good.
There was some information missing in the, both in the draft resolution in your packet and the one I passed out tonight about what the increase was in the police pension fund, or the contribution increase from 2007 to 2009. It was a 34.7% increase in the contribution for the village from 2007 to 2009. So I got that number today from Lisa, and it'll be in the ordinance or the resolution for Monday.
Okay. Part-time telecommunicators. Board to consider a motion retroactively waiving the interview process required by Section 62-56 of the Code of Ordinances for the hiring of part-time telecommunicators.
The reason for this is that most recently we had a resignation in the department, a part-time telecommunicator, and as the board knows, we're engaged in discussions with the Village of Downers Grove now about consolidating our dispatch area. The thinking was that in the short term it might be useful to try to hire some of the existing employees from the Village of Downers Grove on a temporary basis to help fill the void that we have staffing-wise, and to try to relieve some of the overtime that the current TCOs have. So the problem we have is our ordinance has a certain process for hiring, and there's either you go through the advertising process, you publish that, or there's a provision that we can hire from temporary agencies, and we don't have this sort of option available. So we're asking to waive that particular section to allow us to not have to go through the advertising process.
Slightly incorrect, I think.
Okay.
When this was initially placed on the agenda, at least, we had advertised for the position. The question was, we had qualified telecommunicators from Downers Grove who were potentially willing to come and work for the village on a part-time basis to speed this along, because it is absolutely urgent that we get people in place. People are, I guess, getting 1 day a week off now because we're so short-staffed, approaching burnout, and we need to get these people in place. If we go through the lengthy interview process like we typically do, it will just exacerbate the situation. Since we have qualified, basically trained people already, Kathy Casey wanted to waive the interview process to try and get these people hired and trained and in place as quickly as possible. So that's why this came up. It has been advertised, and there is no testing required for this part-time position.
Thank you. Let's vote tonight.
Questions? Finance ordinance number 7.
Waive the reading.
Request to waive the reading. Purchase orders. Unless there's something else to come before us at this time, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session as requested by the manager regarding personnel.
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Trustee Emery?
Yes.
Trustee Forsley?
Yes.
Trustee Scott?
Yes.
Trustee Fleming?
Yes.
Trustee Klebanow?
Yes.
Trustee Seneca?
Yes.
Thank you. We are adjourned.